Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to episode 160 of What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I am your agreeable host, Scott Baltman, and joining me is my original podcast co-pilot, Mr. Derek Marsh. Derek, how's it going?
Good, man. Been dealing with a lot of snow here in Kentucky. Sophia was supposed to go back to school on Monday, and she went back to school Thursday, but it was a late start, so it was really only half a day.
Wow.
And then
Yeah,
we
that
were
was a
supposed to
pretty
get,
pretty big delay.
and then we were supposed to get more snow Friday late afternoon, so they canceled school. Like they called school early. So really, out of 5 days, she only did one day over 2 days. So
Wow. who says kids don't get snow days anymore?
and that was our private school. The public schools had not gone back to school yet. They had all last week off. And then on top of that, apparently they canceled school for tomorrow too, even though I mean the roads are perfectly fine, but I'm not sure what the issue is. So their Christmas break turned in from 2 weeks to 3+ weeks at this point.
It's more like a college winter break at this
No
point than a
joke.
Christmas break. And you know who's really good at taking breaks? That's right, it's our very own Dave Filclone. It's Mr. Gooey Chewy, Mr. Miracle himself, man of 1,000 nicknames. It's Nathan Miracle. Nathan, what's up?
Hey, wait, what are you implying with me taking breaks? Are you
Nothing?
saying
Nothing
that
at
I
all.
just like
We
to
were on a
suddenly
break. Yeah, well,
Sorry,
you know,
had to take
we
a
have
break
been
there.
we have been dealing with some ice and snow here in North Carolina ourselves. I don't think quite as much as what you got up there in bluegrass country, but we got enough that our church called off Sunday school this morning. We are recording this on Sunday, January the 12th. But we also had schools get closed for a day. So yeah, I mean, it's not like we haven't noticed the winter weather, right,
Well,
Nathan?
you might have noticed the winter weather. I barely noticed it. I did get to leave work early on Friday. We had a half day, and that was about it. We had ice that evening. I went out and checked, and there was ice on my car. And then the next morning, there wasn't. So we were pretty much fine here, but I'm a little further south than you are. So
Indeed.
it melted
Yes.
very quickly. We had church today and everything. And
Oh,
you,
okay.
you
Well,
you
there you
you
go.
you couldn't even tell that there had been a storm at this point. It looked like there had been a light rain or something because there were a few puddles in places, and that was it.
Well, we're not here to talk about the weather on Earth. We're here to talk about the weather on At Attin, specifically the weird green cloud weather on At Attin that we have learned in this week's episode of Skeleton Crew, which is Skeleton Crew episode 7. We're gonna be in so much trouble. And man, weren't people in trouble with dealing with the barrier. So, this episode was the one where we got to see exactly how Captain Renaud decided or figured out to thwart At Attin's formidable security system, because we saw a ship try to go, well, multiple ships try to pass through the barrier. Turns out it's like not just a green cloud of stuff cloaking the planet from visible and sensor methods, but there's like the satellites orbiting the whole thing way, way out and generating that energy field and, lightning bolts of doom. Thunderbolts and lightning, very, very frightening. Because if any unauthorized vessel enters the barrier, it's going to get zapped to pieces. But guys, Captain Renaud had a cool theory that turned out to be correct as to how they could enter and leave At Attin, the mint planet from, we now know definitively, the Old Republic, the Republic before the Clone Wars. So
Before the
that's a
High Republic.
pretty before the High Republic. So be way back to like before all kinds of stuff happened. Talk about being cut off from the galaxy. And don't you people watch the news? Answer: no, we're not allowed. So, yeah, that might even be some social commentary on its own. But I digress. So there's my opening thought about Captain Renaud's cool plan. It was to steal one of the ships that is used by the Mint itself. Basically, the right kind of Brinks armored car that would give permission to drive up to the bank and then leave the bank. So there you have it. Anyway,
It had
those
the
are my
proper
overall
QR
thoughts.
code on the side, so as it
That's
went
it.
by, it
Yes.
gets scanned.
It's an older code, sir, but it checks out. Derek, what are your overall opening thoughts before we jump into our 5 questions here for episode
Uh,
7 of Skeleton Crew?
yeah, no, we'll get into it a little bit here, especially with our later questions. But overall, no, I think it's a good episode. Again, hate that it's short, but it was a good episode. It was fun. It's keeping pace with everything. But we'll kind of delve into a little bit more of my deeper thoughts. But overall, like I said, I liked it.
Okay, great. Nathan, your initial thoughts about episode 7?
I thought it was a lot of fun. I can tell that we're kind of getting towards the end of the series. Even if I didn't know the run count, it would feel like, okay, we are getting close to wrapping up because we've gotten back to our home planet. And I think that is a good change of pace because there have been a lot of Star Wars shows where we've gotten to the next to last episode and said, how in the world are they going to tie up
Yeah.
all of these loose ends? And all
And
too
then
often, it's been,
just
we kind of didn't.
We're hoping we get another season.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not
Hello.
a great way to do it, quite frankly.
Hello, Yoda in the Acolyte. How's it going?
Right.
Or Darth Plagueis.
Yes.
Darth Plagueis. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, and those two weren't even matters of the previous episode. Those were added, in the final episode. But even going into the last episode of the Acolyte, it's like we've got so many diverging story points here. How are we going to tie them together? And they didn't do a great job of tying them together. In this show, it looks like we've got a tighter, okay, yeah, we're headed towards the finish line. And I think that's good.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into the 5 questions. And Nathan, we'll just go ahead and start with you since you're in the hot seat there. Question
Very
1,
good.
what did you like best about this episode?
My favorite moment of this episode had to be the unclaimsies and claimsies for the kids only. Well, that's not how this works. Aye, but it'd be close enough. Punch.
Yes. Yeah, it was great. Wang!
Like, okay, at some point, the droids don't just obey their programming. They're just like, you know what? Yes, I like the kids better than you. So
Yeah.
I'm going with what she said, even though it does not make any sense. Although one could argue that Wim called claimsies on the ship. So Wim should be the captain at this point.
Yeah.
And there has been no challenge made. So Wim should be the captain. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was just hilarious to see Smee do the thing.
Yep. Yeah, that was pretty good. I like that Jude Law, or that Crimson Jack was wearing his Captain Silvo helmet at that time. So we got a very satisfying clang as
Yes.
he punched him in the face. All right. Derek, what was your favorite part of episode 7?
I like at this point that they're sticking to their guns. Hopefully, it will not change next episode. That Jude Law's character Jod is bad. That he is a bad guy, and I am great with that because that means that like he's a legit pirate. He's in it for himself. We'll talk about it later. About his backstory. Potentially, if we get more information about that, or if this does well enough. Whether or not we might get its own show type deal, who knows? But to me, that character of the way he's done it, he's the bad guy. The fact that what was the Wolfman's name again?
Brutus.
That he just straight up shot Brutus.
He's like, I've been looking for an excuse to get rid of you. Blam.
And I loved it right before. The fact is, when they were kind of going up to that point in the scene, he's like, the crew loves me. They're not going to get rid of me. The crew loves me more, So, and then he's like, well, if you're not in the picture, they're going to love me more. And they'll be like, okay with it. So, and they were okay with it. So really, to be fair, and again, him using his, charisma 18 and Jedi mind trick level 5, the whole crew's just like, okay, Captain Jack's back in command again.
Crimson Jack, Jod, Silva, whatever his name is, we love him.
Oh, what was the name that he used when he was dating Pocket? Daxton? I gotta look it back up. Anyway.
Yeah. So, but anyways, like I said, anyways, that was great. I was just like, okay, and he's sticking with it. I mean, the fact is, to some degree, I wish he would have killed the kids, just because that would have made him, kind of go that scene. Obviously, I know they weren't going to, but it would have made the
Right.
most sense that he actually would have killed them, because really at the end of the day, everything's protocol with those droids. Now, granted, he didn't know that, and he's trying to use them as hostages and everything. But once he was going down, I was surprised he just didn't kill the kids as they were going down, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and moving on, because once that, and then the whole vault, and he's doing that. That scene was kind of cool looking when he went into the vault, and there you see it. And there was a little trivia question of there was 1,300 and 1,388, I think it was, right, other vaults, which was a nod back to THX
1138.
one. Okay, so it was 1,138. Yeah, I thought I was getting my thing mixed up. That's why I was questioning myself. Yeah.
Well,
So there was
so
1,138 other vaults, and that was the call
no, no,
out.
no, no, no. You almost got it right. Actually, let's do this in question 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it
All right,
technically
so
didn't tie to the universe, but you're right. So,
yeah,
anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyways,
uh,
so
so
go
yeah,
ahead.
they got it right though. You were absolutely correct. I'll explain it when we get to question 3. So my favorite part of this episode is a little esoteric. There's a lot of great stuff in this episode, but when the ship's coming in for a landing and it switches like to the we're being pulled down by an automated landing net beacon, the park opens up and they're like people like milling about on the grass that has grown on the landing platform because it's been so long since they received a visit, which one of the droids kind of mentions later when he's all like, we have quite a surplus of credits stored up because you haven't been here in a while. And so the thing opens, and when you look at it from above, it is the Imperial cog, or the Republic symbol back in the day was modified Imperial cog, or becomes modified Imperial cog. But I love that that was a nod to this is from a really long time ago. And so we've got the basic, the Republic symbol here is built into the architecture. And I don't know if that's supposed to be built into the architecture in universe or if it was just a cool nod from the special effects guys. But I also loved that it's been so long, and perhaps generations of people have come and gone since one of the armored car ships came back to pick up the credits, so that they're all like, what does he mean we have to get off the grass? And then the whole place starts opening and they're like, whoa. And so the ship lands. I just thought that was a cool idea, and it kind of felt like almost an Ancient Aliens or Isaac Asimov type reference to systems that are designed to last longer than the lifetimes of the people that built the systems, like Psycho History in the Foundation series and so on and so forth, which is just a really cool science fiction note and a really old, like hopeful science fiction, like from the early or mid 20th century, which is
Like
where Star
Fifth
Wars had
Element
its
or
genesis.
Stargate.
Yes, like Stargate or the Fifth Element, exactly. So you'd like the pyramids on some planet don't do anything until the Stargate gets discovered, and then they spring to life, and they're like, "What? This is how this works? We had no idea. This is what this does because it was built by our ancestors' ancestors' ancestors."
And an
So yeah,
alien
it was
technology.
yes,
Right.
exactly. It's extraterrestrial, and for At Attin, same thing is true. This was built a long time ago by people who were not born on this planet, people who came to this planet and built all this stuff for the mint of the old republic. One of 9, and the last one that remains. I gotta wonder if there's some kind of special meaning to 9 mints. But anyway, I digress.
There's a ninth
Let's
Jedi.
move on.
That is exactly what I was thinking too.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it
Oh
relates
man, if
at
they,
all, but it is funny.
yeah. Anyways,
Is
let's
there a
move on
rule
to
of
question.
9 somewhere?
There, there. I
There's a
bet
rule
there's
of
some
2
sort
we know
of.
for the Sith, but there was a rule of 9, or am I just thinking
I'll
Lord of
bet
the Rings?
there's some kind of Eastern mysticism or samurai code that involves 9 tenets, like the 9 lessons of Bushido, or some sort of martial arts thing about 9 forms
Yeah,
of
because a
combat.
lot of video games use like the 7 sages, right? They've done
Mhm.
that, but I was trying to think if there's
Yeah.
anything 9 from like you said, historical or like even Greek or anything. So
I was
Yeah,
trying to think. There are 12 Jedi Council members, so that's not.
Dash Zinton, thank you, Nathan. You just
Yes.
sent me the message about the other alias used by Captain
Yeah,
Silvo.
yeah.
Dash Zinton.
Notably,
Yes.
not Dash Rendar.
Exactly. Yes. Dash Rendar. Anyway, okay, let's go on to question number 2. Derek, I'll let you go first this time. What did you like least about this episode?
Well, I have an honorable mention at first before I get into the one that I didn't like. And it was actually partially the opposite of Nathan with his. I kind of didn't like the unclaimsy thing just because at first it was kind of like the droid, right? And he would have been like kind of the one that the whole time Smee's the one that follows the by the code, by the book type deal. But then I was kind of thinking like, well, but leave it to a kid, at the same time to come up with something zonky or zany like that, where
Yeah.
then as a droid, he couldn't not go against the logic. And I almost wish they would have said something like that. Like, well, by my logic, no thing in my programming denies that you can't unclaimsy, right? Like, and again, leave it to a kid then. So it was somewhat forgivable, but I was just sitting there. It's like, okay, there's some plot armor there, but it's cute because it's a kid's show, right? So that was fine.
Yeah.
The one thing I actually didn't like was towards the end. And again, it's with the parents. And I didn't like that they just magically appeared at the bottom of the mint in the vault at the end. I don't like that. I know the one lady is supposed to be high clearance and all that, but they've been denying her everything else along the way, the robots. And it's not like
Yeah.
all the droids just suddenly stopped working, right? Like that was a long way for them to go down. So
Yeah.
like, is there like just all of a sudden a secret elevator that they found? Like, it doesn't explain how they got there. And I was kind of like, that just seems so out of the element. I mean, it's supposed to leave you suspenseful at the end of the episode, right, for the season finale. But I'm just like, there's no way that I think any of them would have been able to, unless except the one lady, maybe, like I said, whoever's Fern's mom, I don't know what type of director lady, supervisor lady she is, that would have clearance to get down to the mint, because everybody else is just an analyst, right? So,
And at this point in time, she's in so much trouble already for
Yeah.
breaking the barrier and running away.
Yeah.
Like, you would think that her clearances had been revoked.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, at that point in time, like, the robots were just pissed off at her saying, you're in so much trouble. And then here comes, the emissary, and they're like, oh, we'll just forget everything. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Like, there's like 3 droids that are helping him. All the other droids, because apparently that's all they rely on is droids on everything, that there would have been somebody to stop him. Like, it would have been cute or something exposition wise for them to do a whole like hijacking an elevator or something, right? And beating up a couple of droids and short circuiting them to get down through the elevator to get down there, so that then they could have been there, right? Like, that portion of that little scene that we don't get to see show, and again, maybe that's how the kickoff episode 8, right? Where it's like showing the parents, right? And
Maybe.
how they get into
Yeah,
it.
the kids might be all like, Mom, Dad, how are you here? Well,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. So but otherwise that was probably the only thing I didn't like, because it's just like, okay, now they're just MacGuffined here again, right? Or plot armored here. So for drama and suspense. But anyways, nitpicking it.
I figured they just took an elevator, and at this point, since they're no longer actively doing illegal things, the droids are like, okay, well, we need to reunite you with your kids, because they know that these are the parents of the kids. But
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
Well,
it
anyway,
was
Nathan,
not super well explained. But my least favorite thing is kind of the opposite of your favorite thing, Derek. We killed Brutus.
Yeah.
Brutus was a really interesting character to me, and I wanted to see more of Brutus, and he just unceremoniously got killed, which was very appropriate. So I don't hate it that much. It was a good moment, but I'm sad that we aren't going to get more Brutus from here on out. And I don't feel like he's the type of character that we'll go back and see some major backstory on him. I think we're done with him. But I just love Shistovanian Wolfman, and it does appear that that's what he is, not a Defil, even though those are very similar species.
I think the key is the snout. The snout is somewhat different.
Yeah, but this does mean that Shistovanian Wolfmen can be as dark as Defil are, but I mean, that's reasonable. Just the fact that we won't have him anymore. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and give you a spoiler for Derek's favorite part of the show. I am wearing my Wolfpack t-shirt
Yes.
in honor of
Brutus,
the Wolfman. That's not what this shirt is about, but I'm making it about that today.
Like, it's still a wolf. I mean how much more complicated do we have to be here? All right, well,
I was just going to say, though, but Nathan should use his Folclone mind tap into Dave and tell him we need a couple of episodes on Tales of the Cantina about Brutus.
That's true. Yes,
So you could get more
Tales of
episodes.
Jabba's Palace, I think, might be even better.
Either way. But
Ooh.
again, you could then put
I mean,
3
we need
episodes about Brutus and how we got to that point on being Jod's part of Jod's mutiny cast.
we need both series, Tales of the Cantina and Tales of Jabba's Palace.
And I
We
want
do
this
need
Tales of
Bob Nip
Jabba's
Fortuna,
Palace.
like that in between.
Yeah, exactly. The
Yeah.
Tales of Jabba's Palace should focus on the time frame that Bib was the crime lord.
Well, it should do both. It should do a couple episodes where Jabba's the Lord, and then
Yeah, like
several
how
where-
Jabba
yeah.
got to be there, like how he got to be
'Cause,
the
like,
Lord.
Tales of the Jedi jumped around in the time frames, and started with earlier time frame like Phantom Menace time frame, and then moved on to later time frame. So why not with Tales of Jabba's Palace?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I could get behind that.
I
All right,
mean, it's
And,
nice
you,
comics.
and you know who else would show up in Tales of Jabba's Palace? Mara Jade, but we'll talk about that later in this episode.
Ooh. Arica. Oh my gosh, I'm in. Okay, so my least favorite part of episode 7 of Skeleton Crew is similar to what Derek was talking about with the parents making their way down to the thing. It's that when the ship arrives on At Attin, and Crimson Jack is just like, yes, I am the emissary, Dr. Galley Wickets. Your name, Dr. Galakowitz? Yes, I am.
I am
There's like
Professor Umium Gorlax.
yeah, there's no kind of like security
Verification.
code, password. I mean, my email is more secure than the entire mint planet of At Attin. Although perhaps this is some subtle
That's the ship,
commentary.
though.
Or not so subtle commentary. Well, maybe. But I'm like, this is not so subtle commentary about how really bad the Old Republic was with security precautions, which is why the Clone Wars happened so easily, and Darth Sidious became Emperor Palpatine with like, hey, no problem.
I mean,
but
let's be honest. We had, oh yes, we will order an entire Grand Army of the Republic. Don't bother
And
checking to see if we're
nobody
associated with the
knows.
Republic at all.
And even though we are, nobody in the Republic knew that the order had been placed. It's like, here are the 17,000 pizzas you ordered. What?
What?
I just happened to conveniently place this order because I knew we'd be hungry.
Yeah.
We'll take
Yeah.
them, but what?
Yes. Anyway, so yeah, I was really sad that there was no sort of, and what is the password for your authorization to have this ship, and so on and so forth. I guess perhaps naively or arrogantly, I believe that's the real lesson we're supposed to take from the Old Republic. They assumed nobody would ever be able to steal one of their armored car starships to break into the bank. So why bother having any sort of access code or passphrase or like, man, if you had a republic, or in this case, almost a empire that was spread around the galaxy, almost half the galaxy, but like part of the backbone of your society was the Jedi, wouldn't you have like force-enabled security protocols? Like, if you're able to, come to the Mint, but in order to get in, it's like the temple that Darth Maul and Ezra broke into or found in Rebels, where they had to have two of them use the Force to raise the temple and then open the gate so they could go through. Like, you couldn't just do it as one Force user; you had to have two. Like, how come the Republic structures don't have this kind of stuff in place? Like, yes, it's run by droids, but to get into the vault, you have to use the Force to turn this cog over here with no hand, and then turn this other cog with your physical hand. So you've got to be able to use the Force. Now, of course, in this story, that won't help because Crimson Jack can use the Force to move stuff, which would have been a cool thing where the kids would be all like, well, he'll never get past the... Yeah, he'll be like, the kids have been all, he'll never get past the Force lock. And then like, oh crap, he will. Do. And they're like, dang it, he's a bad guy, but he has the Force. It would have been a cool moment of, this is a real Star Wars story now. But I guess we got that kind of already with the lightsaber's presence. But more on that in a moment. But overall, though, but none of that was required. No password, no like key, no type in the phrase, no tell the droid the command word. Just you're here.
He showed up in the ship. That's how he got past the barrier. Remember, they assumed if you got past the barrier, you're good enough. That
you
was
didn't
their
get
one
fried.
security precaution.
So, yeah, you didn't get fried, so you must be legit.
Apparently, they didn't plan in their budget more than that in their defenses, right? So,
well, that and they don't have any sensors or anything to tell them that, oh, by the way, our defenses blew up several ships.
Yeah.
like
The whole
it might
planet
be
reeks of hubris.
a little suspicious that we also blew up a ship right before you showed up.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm
Oh
sure
well.
that some screenwriter is listening to this right now because obviously Lucasfilm listens to this show.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're just like, you guys are overthinking it. It's a kids show, you know.
Well, this is why the other 8 of them were decimated.
Yeah,
It
because
probably is, quite frankly.
the security wasn't good enough. Like at some point, it got overwhelmed because they never updated it between the time it was made and
Yeah.
whatever else has been happening in the
Or
galaxy.
mhm.
Okay, question number 3, Derek. We were just talking about it. What connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy? So you were talking about THX 1138. If you look at the closed captioning and listen carefully, the droid tells Captain Silvo we have 1,137 other vaults. But then if you
Yes.
include the one they're standing in, you got it. So good
Yes.
job, you
Thank you.
picking out 1138. Anyway, anything else that you got?
I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I still thought it would have been cool, but I get that they were trying to make it that you, especially in this episode where it had to be an old Republic ship, um, to get clearance to get through the storm and all that stuff. But I really thought when they first showed the full haul and the true way that the obsidian cinder looks like, I almost thought it was a U-wing, and I was like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that would have been cool if it was a U-wing," but it wasn't. So, but no, I mean, there was. I'm trying to think what else. Uh,
I mean,
I,
that was a big getting a 1138 reference is a big one.
yeah,
So
it was.
that's
Like I
really
said,
all
it
you
was a
got.
good Easter egg for that one.
Yeah.
But then there was. I was trying to think if the claw that got Brutus was anything, but I was like, no, that was more Toy Story. But that was another Disney property. But
Declan has chosen. Yeah.
um, but at the same time, though, I mean, I was trying to think. Nah, that was pretty much it. Unless if there was something to do with. Nah, I can't think of anything.
All right. Well, my big one was uh, the the stacks of credits. Especially once Crimson Jack is all like, "Ooh, credits," and he touches it and it begins to go, brrr, and it's like flowing out of the container,
Sand.
and he's like worshiping it. Right? It reminded me of almost the exact same thing that happened in Andor at the beginning of season 1 when they did the whole heist, and they were like literally killing people with stacks of credits because credits were being loaded onto that ship. And then when the security forces, the Imperials, came down there and they started having the firefight, every so often one of the containers, the vaults, the carts would get blowed open and credits would just spill out everywhere. It absolutely reminded me of that. And thinking about all of the people that got killed on Andor for the bank heist and all of the people that Crimson Jack has killed already on the way to this bank heist, it's like blood money, a huge theme in Star Wars. And you've got that blood money theme all over Star Wars with bounty hunters. I'm especially thinking about Cad Bane throwing money around while tracking down and occasionally killing children for Palpatine. And then later we see him killing children in the Bad Batch when Cad Bane helps to capture the little furry youngling thing in the Bad Batch season 2 or no, sorry, 3, right? Yeah, season 3, when he takes it to the facility where Omega is with all the other force sensitive kids. He's like throwing credits at people right after he's killed somebody. Just the definition of blood money. And of course, it all goes back to our 1980s roots of Jabba the Hutt with the price on Han Solo's head, which is, of course, a commentary for 80s corporate culture in general at that moment in time in 1983. Like the dude says in Futurama, Fry, I'm an 80s guy. I'm your best friend, but I beat you with a broken pool cue until you got a detached retina in exchange for a few bucks. All right, Nathan, take it
Well,
away.
and on that lovely thought, I'm going to go with the perhaps biggest connecting thing in all of Star Wars. Neil has a bad feeling about this. Doesn't quite get the line out. Just, I've got a bad
Yes.
They get interrupted, but you can tell that's where it's going. We're about to get one of the classic I have a bad feeling about this lines that we have gotten since 1977 in the original Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
when they were approaching the Death Star. I've got a bad feeling about this. Um, that's about it, really,
Yeah.
because there wasn't a lot new in this episode. There was a lot of moving around of pieces that we've already seen. So, like, yeah, we had Brutus, who's a Shishavadian Wolfman, but we've also had him in previous episodes. We've had the lightsaber in previous episodes, the references to the Old Republic and all that. So the only really new thing I have is the bad feeling.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I mean, it's a good connecting tissue, like you said. All right. Well, let's move on to question number 4. Which one of you guys did question 4 this time?
Nathan.
That was me.
All right, Nathan, take it away.
All right. There has been some speculation on this. Who is the supervisor of At Attin? Is it someone we know? Someone we don't know? And if it is someone we know, who?
Okay, my answer. Sorry, Derek, I'm going to go first.
You're fine.
My answer is the supervisor has been dead for a long time, but holograms exist of a record of what the supervisor looked and sounded like. The droid's central processing unit has been consistently using a hologrammatic simulacrum of the supervisor for at least 20 years, if not longer than 20 years, to impersonate the supervisor. And Captain Renaud found out about this and used it as a way to get inside the planet and has been living like a king in the supervisor's office to where no one actually comes in there anymore. And he and the army of droids use the holographic simulacrum to make it to where nobody knows that the wizard is not real. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
I like it. Derek, what are your thoughts?
Derek?
I mean, that's what I had brought up, when we first talked about it, right? After the first couple episodes, and we were kind of talking about some of these side plots about At Attin and, if we would ever get it. And exactly, right? I presumed it was some type of Wizard of Oz, right? Was I mentioned? So Scott's right on par with that. That makes sense that it would be him, right?
Totally why I went first.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it makes sense that it would be him because, right, he crashed his ship there and he's been living there ever since, right? So,
and more importantly than all of that, when we finally got to an episode of the show where we were going to see a hologram log recording of Captain Renaud, it malfunctioned. We didn't get to see what he really looked like.
Yeah, it was
So
on
that's
purpose.
right.
So that way, if
Yeah.
anybody found the ship and then got the thing and saw the records, right, then they wouldn't be able to pinpoint back to him that it was him. So,
Yeah. All right, Nathan, what's your answer to your own question here? Who is the supervisor?
Well, if it's somebody that we know, Renaud is the obvious choice because he's the character who has been mentioned that we haven't really seen. But I have a really secret reason that I brought this question up, and it was so that we could talk about Renaud. Because I saw pointed out, I can't claim that I noticed this, and y'all will know that I didn't notice this because it's a behind-the-scenes thing. Renaud, Rennod. If you take that and reverse it,
It's Donner.
Donner, who was the director of the Goonies.
Oh my gosh, dude. That's awesome. Okay, I had not yet. Oh, I agree with you. I had not put that together. Yeah, that's great. If this is some kind of reference to Richard Donner, right? Is that
Richard Donner, yeah.
Yeah. Who also, by the way, directed Superman, the movie.
the original, yeah.
Yeah.
I did not know that either. This is how I knew that you guys would know that I'm not the one who.
Yeah,
who
it's not your original thought.
Because it has nothing to do with Star Wars or Star Trek. Yes.
Exactly. It's like,
true.
a director? Yeah,
Or the Food
I have
Network.
no chance.
Or Top Chef. Right.
Yeah, Top Chef. Yeah, but no. So I can't claim credit for that. I did see it elsewhere, but when I saw it, I thought, okay, these guys definitely want to know this, and I don't think we've brought it up on the podcast, which means I think they haven't realized it.
Didn't think about it.
So with the name being an anagram for Donner, I mean, who do you think
It's just
that means?
straight up reversed. Yeah.
Sure. Yes. A type of anagram. Do you
That's true.
do you think there's going to be some kind of cameo from Richard Donner? Is he still alive? I don't even know.
I have no idea. No clue.
Anyways,
He
is
should
that what
be.
you?
He should be. He's not that old when he made Goonies. I mean, granted, it was almost 40 years ago, right? When Goonies came out. So,
Yeah.
But,
No,
gotta
he
look
died in 2021.
oh, dang.
Well, okay, yeah, he was that old when the Goonies came out.
Oh, was he?
He was born in 1930.
Oh, okay.
So,
Woo, dang.
He was 90,
um,
90
Although
or
let's
almost.
be clear here. We live in an era where if you want Richard Donner in your movie or your TV show, you could make a digital facsimile of Richard Donner. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I don't know, Nathan. What do you think is going to happen with the supervisor?
um, I think it is going to be Renaud, and Jod will recognize him and be like, "Hey, you're that guy that was the pirate captain," and they'll have it out, and that'll be part of how the kids get out of this. Is the pirates will take care of each other because I don't think the kids can.
Well, Jada will live.
I think Jod will
You
live.
know,
Go ahead.
we could easily have a sword fight on the bridge there,
We
because
could.
obviously Jod's turned on his lightsaber as part of the cliffhanger, and not to give too much away, but in Star Wars: The Old Republic MMO, you can get a cutlass-shaped lightsaber as a weapon. It's a lightsaber
Ooh.
hilt that has an extended metal part at the top, and when you turn on the energy blade, it fills in the space between the pommel and the point of the metal hilt. In fact, while you guys kibitz, I'm
Well,
going to
it's
go find a
any
picture real quick.
electrical sword is a lightsaber. So I mean, there's plenty of stuff that they had. Magma guards, even back not
Yeah.
that long ago, right? With the Clone Wars had the ability. We know that the Royal
in episode
Guards
3.
had something similar in their laser weapons.
They had the force
Yeah.
spikes, yeah.
Yeah, on the force pikes.
Although we
Obviously,
didn't see those in action in the original trilogy.
no, but I
But-
mean, in theory, it is canon though at this point, even in
right.
novels, right? It's Disney novels that's canon. So yeah, I definitely could see that would make the most sense, right? Because you got to think if they're gonna do Renaud as the um, wizard type deal style, it would make the most sense that there would be a final action scene, just like in the Goonies, where you do have Sloth, right, coming in. Hey, you guys, right? And maybe
Yes.
maybe Neil will be riding on the back of Jod, right, and hanging on as he swings down to save Wim and Fern, because that's the problem. As I was debating this, because this will lead into our next question 5.
As a matter of
Which
fact, we might as well just go
that's
ahead
what I'm
and roll into
doing.
it. Yeah.
Yes, because Nathan kind of took a little bit out of it, because that would be one of the questions. Or part of this question is, what side story or stories do we think will wrap up in the season finale here, right? And what I mean by side stories, right, like we were talking about the supervisor, right? What happened now that we're kind of piecing it together? What happened to Renaud? What is potentially Jod's background, right? What is going on
Okay.
with At and the Old Republic? There's a lot of side stories. So again,
But before we
go
do
ahead.
that, I do
Yeah.
have a picture of the lightsaber cutlass to
Yes,
show.
Okay.
It is that part
Okay.
right there. Let's see if we can get
The
this in
third
here.
one over.
Yes, the third one over. This one right here. So if they bring in something that looks like this for Renaud to use in like the big final duel, and we do have a energy sword fight on the one of the bridges there, that'd be awesome.
That would
anyways.
be epic, yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I couldn't resist to be all
You're
like,
fine.
dudes, check out how nerdy this is. All right. Yes. Question 5. Rock and roll.
So as I was saying, so any of the stories or one of the stories you would like them to see, guys, that would tie up season 5, or I'm sorry, the end of the season in episode 8.
Well, I think mostly the Renaud question, because he's been almost a character in the show. Like, we've heard so much about him, for him to not show up would feel kind of weird. And I do think that would, as I mentioned, give us a way to have a climactic showdown that can kind of end the show with Jod being not quite a full bad guy. Because while he is a bad guy, he's also been very reluctant to actually harm the kids.
Yeah.
And this is in keeping with Long John Silver. He was a bad guy, but he didn't want to hurt Jim. He cared about Jim.
Yes.
I think Jod cares about the kids.
Correct.
That doesn't make him a good guy. He's still bad, but he doesn't want to hurt them. And I could
He'll
see him,
leave the kids to die. He just won't kill them himself.
right. I could see him protecting the kids from Renaud if Renaud turns out to be the supervisor and is like, "Hey, I've got to stop you, and in doing so, I'm putting the kids in danger, and they've been outside. I'll got to get rid of the witnesses."
It's a barely disguised Treasure Island redo because the kid's
really
name
is, yeah.
is, instead of Jim, is Wim.
It's Wim.
We changed one whole letter in his name.
Well,
Obviously,
we got Silvo instead of Silver. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, sorry. Were you done, Nathan?
Not quite. I do think Jod will escape because Long John Silver escapes in Treasure Island.
He will have some. He will have some credits.
Yeah. So this is not a situation where I'm expecting redemption equals death.
Okay. So he will have no redemption, nor will he die.
Correct. You don't have to die if you don't redeem yourself.
He'll be Crimson Jack. He'll live to see another day.
He'll be Crimson Jack, and we'll get a cut scene an after credit scene of him at some random cantina putting together another group of pirates because that's what he does. His new first officer will be a large green rabbit.
At this point, that wouldn't surprise me all that much.
So the major storyline beat thing wrap up, I hope doesn't get just sort of left out there. Is how the heck has this planet been continuing to do what it's doing since before the Clone Wars? And here we are all the way after the Civil War. What the heck, guys? I get the whole some Japanese soldiers were trapped on ancient Pacific islands for so long that by 1960, or 58 or whatever it was, they didn't know that World War II was over. And some people found them and they thought they should kill them because the war was still happening. But that would be even longer of a gap of time if you had a planet, an entire planet of people who didn't realize not only that the Clone Wars started, raged, ended, and the Empire rose and fell before they knew what was up. I hope even if there's one throwaway line from another particular person who is part of the New Republic going, yeah, it's like, hi, I'm Lieutenant Exposition from Novelty Squadron. We're here to tell you what happened between the time that you last had contact with the outside galaxy. And they're like, well, you're from the Republic, right? Yes, but we're from the New Republic. Anyway. And then, of course,
there were many republics in between, though, too, because you had the High Republic, the Grand Republic.
What would be so cool is if he's there, like the captain of that. Like we've seen the two X-wing pilots, and I think it's the same two throughout every episode of Skeleton Crew that have been slowly but surely chasing them along ever since way back with the owl lady who is the astrogation person. Still hoping that gets tied up too, by the way, because she very much left it open of, if you need me, here's how to call me. And you're like, surely they're going to call her, right? Anyway, Kamir, that's her name. So if, or Keimer? Anyway, if we have Captain Exposition show up with his partner, like Captain Exposition is all diplomatic and, we're going to help reassimilate you to the outside world. Meanwhile, the other guy, Lieutenant Sidekick is all, oh my God, look at all these credits. The government is going to be so happy with us because we're way, way in deficit spending as a fledgling New Republic. And like half of that money is what helps the New Republic like not collapse as, before it actually does.
Which still ends up collapsing due to just the random First Order and the remaining remnants.
Yeah, exactly. But it'd be funny if one of them is all like, look at all this money. Yeah. But but then there's no answer as to, wait, why is this money worth anything now? I don't understand. Anyway.
Well, here's the funny thing that's going to happen, though, because for whatever reason, the way they were showing the vault, apparently they just kept digging into the center of At Attin because there was no bottom. Like it was just, we stopped on this, we built a little thing. So all of it's just going to fall down into the middle of the planet and just not be worth anything, right? Because they were stupid and just didn't put a bottom to the vault for whatever reason, right?
Are you saying
all
that
of it except the part Jod steals?
Yeah. Are you saying that in their,
they'll get a box of treasure?
In their greed and avarice, they delved too deep?
Probably. But again, I don't know why they would need to, because like once you build the bottom of the vault,
they just keep doing it because nobody's come to take delivery of the stuff you've minted, and you're a droid. Your programming is just build another vault.
But again, it's hubris. But why would you make a vault out of the mine? To me,
No,
that is stupid too. On top of that, but back to you, Bruce. That's fine, right? So
I think Scott's right though. There's just some droids out there. It's like my programming says
mine for
dig.
mithril.
I keep digging.
Exactly.
It's like having
Give me that
dig far enough
Arkenstone.
does not matter. Just keep digging. Just keep digging.
Well, and it goes back to your original storyline. Like they would have had to keep doing this forever. Like at some point, the emissary didn't show up. The emissary hasn't shown up for like 1,000+ years, and nobody questioned it.
And then the emissary shows up. The emissary shows up, and there's like, yep, checks out totally.
But to credit though, because as Scott led this off, right? There's a whole social connectivity we could talk about this and how like the people, like the droids run the government, and yet the people keep doing what the droids say. And like they're just like, I'm just going to be an analyst and keep my head down and not disrupt the peace, right? Like you could see this
because ironically, or perhaps totally predictably, when you put the droids in charge, so the droids tell you what to do.
Yeah.
Over the generations, you venerate the droids, and so you get rewarded when you give up your humanity, stick to your job, and you act like a droid, because droids are venerated in your society. Drones, if you will. They'll just keep working and doing their assignment, even if they'd rather do something else, or they have emotional pain behind it, or it's not logical to do this thing, but we're just going to keep doing my job. Keep your head down.
They
take the
distract
tests
you
so
from what's really going on behind the scenes, which is what in today's government's world, right? We could all talk about that, but we're not going to get. That's a whole nother podcast.
It's a different podcast.
But anyway, so
I do think it is a bit of a commentary on AI because
that too.
Because in Star Trek, I know wrong series, but bear with me for a minute. In Star Trek, technology is the thing that sets humans free and allows humans to pursue whatever goals they want. But here in the real world, we got AI, and what's the first thing that we end up doing with it? You can make art, you can make songs. The AI is taking over the creative stuff and leaving the boring, mundane stuff that machines should be taking over to us, the humans. It's like this is the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing, but it's what's happening on At Attin. The droids are making the humans do all the yes, I want to sit here moving numbers around.
But we know Nathan would be in heaven.
I would be okay with it. Yes, I like moving numbers around on spreadsheets.
Yeah.
But I also like painting miniatures. So I want my free time for that too.
I'm not saying they're not going to have that though, because if you recall, like when they're watching, I mean, yes, it's supposed to be an homage back to the holiday special, but again, we don't know how those actors or those gymnasts were created in that televised, right? Like who's doing that recording too, right? Like to your point, Nathan, like you think that, but they could have a small group of people that would still conform to the things that need to happen to keep the people at masses, right? Like there's not everybody's going to be an analyst, right?
Majority of them are to go along with the bread.
Yeah. But there's going to be a few people that you said that are going to go that, right? But yeah, it would be a good way of doing it. I did think of something though, as we were typing this though, kind of going back to question 4 a little bit though, because we know that this has to tie back to the Mandalorian series, right? They said that there's connectivity. It's in the same universe and that they're going to connect it somehow. What happens if the supervisor is not Renaud and is somebody, can you think of, that would be tied back, Scott, to the heir to the Empire? Because that's what we're getting with the next portion of the Mandoverse.
Talon Card? Because he's a pirate.
It could be, but I was thinking of somebody else that would be adequate to fight someone that's force sensitive.
I think you're thinking of Joris Cyboth.
Yeah, Joris Cyboth.
Yeah, okay.
That would be not necessarily somebody from the Old Republic, but would be somebody that would be old, would be a clone, right? So what happens if the supervisor, they go in and it's a crazed, mad, dark Jedi? So anyways.
Ooh. Yeah, that would be a cool foil for Crimson Jack to fight with his lightsaber, because, we know that Joris, in the Heir to the Empire novels anyway, is able to do Force lightning and all that crazy stuff, right?
It would bring up some major cloning questions, but they're kind of questions that are being brought up anyway with trying to clone
within
Grogu.
the Mandoverse,
That's
within
what I'm
that
saying.
time
It's
frame.
more
Yeah.
Mandoverse cloning, and it would be a tie back to Heir
Yeah.
to the Empire, which is what we're going to be getting with Filoni, right? When he's making his movie here and writing Ahsoka season 2. So, anyways, just
That'd be
throwing it out there.
fascinating.
That
If
what
Master
happens if-
Joras shows up, then I'm gonna like buy you a beer or something. I'll send you a gift card for the Star Trek.
just
Wine
buy me
Club.
some Marvel Crisis Protocol or something, right? So
There we
easier
go.
to ship a box of that. So
Yeah,
So,
I'll
that'd
find
be-
some booster packs of Star Wars CCG and
There you
on
go.
eBay and ship them to you.
Nah, it's all good. It would just be like, I finally got one right. Woohoo! No.
Yes, you get one virtual point.
There you go. But yeah, no, going back to my question 5, though, I mean, I think that I really would like to see the whole, you guys really hit some good spots and just getting this whole, the completion of this story, right? Like feel very confident because as we alluded to it, that's the problem I think with a lot of just shows in general nowadays, right? Where they're leaving so many plot holes because they figure out, oh, I got the best thing since sliced bread, and I'm going to easily get multi-year, renewals for my seasons, and I can explain everything here. And it's like, no, the best shows, honestly, especially when they're hidden gems, always complete their story in that. I'm not saying you can't leave a small cliffhanger or leave, but for the most part, it is a complete story. It's hard in something like Star Wars because obviously the universe has been developed for so long, right? And it's been sitting there. It's not like it's just something. But I think that would be wonderful if they just finished a complete story and didn't leave all these dangling threads, right? Which they should, because you guys just mentioned, when we earlier were talking about it, right, Scott, where this is only supposed to be one season, right? Now,
Yeah, the writers have said, the creators of Skeleton Crew have said, we really just wrote one story. We told the self-contained story. It's not like Stranger Things or The Mandalorian, where you had set out with the
or
idea
Andor,
of-
even where there was
or
expected
Andor,
to be two
yeah,
seasons,
where
right?
they pre-planned 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Where they had set out with this idea, or the in my opinion genesis of all this, Babylon 5, where you had somebody sit out and plan all 5 seasons. Now, even JMS had to make changes to Babylon 5 because people got fired, people got pregnant, people got sick, whatever.
Yeah, life
but
happens.
he fixed it. He
Yeah.
fixed it and kept on going.
The base of the story
so-
was there, right? So
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And that's where I said we were joking about, like, hey, you could do spin-offs after this, right? Like you could take a character and you could do stuff, right? It would be interesting to see the kids later in life, right? I don't need to see them in their whole whimsical thing like the Stranger Things, because let's be honest, at this point, season 5, it's supposed to be 5 years, but they're all in college now at this point when they should be just starting, high school. So,
yeah.
to me, that would be fine, right? But I really would like to see the whole At Attin, like, closure of, okay, like they're actually going to get, like, it's not just going to end where it's like everything goes back to normal, right? Like it's going to actually get a true ending. There's going to be somebody else that gets through the cloud, or they're going to figure out how to shut down the whatever it's called,
Defense
the
system, the barrier.
the barrier. Thank you. And then we'll get something conclusion with the supervisor. Definitely think that would be a good understanding of what the droids have been doing and all this. And then last but not least, I'm okay not getting the backstory of Jod, but I definitely would like to make sure if Jod lives, do we get that cliffhanger afterwards, as Nathan was saying, the extra credit or mid-credit scene where he does something and he runs into someone, right? Where he's going to be that will connect it to the Mandoverse, right? At some point, right? Like he'll get, all of a sudden you're going to see Din Djarin is got a puck to go after Crimson Jack.
That'd be awesome. That would be so great.
Because that would tie it, right? I mean, Mando's supposed to be back to doing this with the guild, right? He got back on their stuff. That's what he's doing. And maybe that's what ties into the Mando and Grogu movie.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
I mean that would tie it into the Mando Grogu movie, but I kind of want, if we do get something like that, I kind of want it to be something that we don't need to follow up on, because I don't feel that we necessarily need to come back to Jod. So if we just see him putting together a new crew, then we can just assume, okay, he goes back out and does piratey things, and we don't necessarily need to see it.
Yeah.
If we see Din getting a puck where he's like, well, I need to go after Jod, then we're going to expect to see that at some point. And I don't know that we should.
I mean, it could always come into the next season of Grogu or the Mando as well, too, right? It could
Sure.
be a cameo, two episode cameo arc or something like that.
Well, and we did have Vane,
Yeah.
the pirate, has shown up. He's not had as big of a role as I thought he was going to have in Skeleton Crew, but he was in this episode.
Or maybe he runs into Daimyo Boba, right? Or
Oh, that'd be
something.
cool.
Or I mean, even better yet, too. He could run into our person that hasn't made a cameo yet that needs to, and a good old Hondo Anaka, right? So back at the pirate port, right? So
Yeah.
and obviously
That
I
would
want
be a good cameo, yeah.
and I want
This could
Smee
be a
to go with him.
Yeah, this could be a cool opportunity also to have a Dr. Aphra cameo. Introduce her in an after credit scene, and then maybe she gets her own show later on. That is
So
not
this would
necessarily
be
a continuation
post Vader Afra than you're thinking?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it
Yeah.
has
So
to
she'd
be.
be
Well,
a
I
little
understand.
bit older, but her cybernetics can make her still seem young.
Well, I get that. I would be curious to see a post Vader Afra versus a Afra, that was in her prime, to your point. Like we were talking, like we'll get into
Yeah.
the Mara Jade conversation, right? A younger Afra versus an older
Yeah.
Afra.
And I think they might leave younger Aphra as the purview of the comic books that they've already done, and this will be an
Maybe.
older Aphra.
I mean, Fennec
But,
Shan's lasted this long,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was going to say. Phoenix Shand. We got Ming Na Wen, and then we also got the Ming Na Wen voiced Clone War. Well, slightly after Clone Wars era,
Bad Batch.
Bad Batch era. Yeah.
Cool. Well, if any of those things do happen on the next episode of Skeleton Crew, you can bet that we're going to discuss it ad nauseum, because that's what we do here on the Fandom Podcast Network. But we are not the only ones who do it. And it isn't just limited to Star Wars. We got all kinds of shows on the FPN, and Kevin is going to tell you about them right now.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville Show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right, thanks so much, Kevin. Well, you guys, there's been plenty of other Star Wars stuff happening in the galaxy far, far away this week. So we're going to talk about two casting-related news articles. First up is one that's near and dear to my heart with my classic Star Wars girlfriend from yesteryear, Mara Jade. Rumors abound, as Derek already talked about in this episode of the podcast, that Heir to the Empire is happening as the next major story arc that we're getting in the Star Wars live-action era, which of course begs the question, who is going to play Mara Jade, the super sexy, badass, redhead, former Dark Jedi, sometimes turned Light Jedi, possible wife of Luke Skywalker, in the live-action era? So our friends over at Screen Rant, of course, have a classic theory casting, or some might call it fan casting article here talking about it, written by one Sean Morrison about a week ago. The headline is Casting Mara Jade in the Star Wars canon 10 actors who'd be perfect playing Luke Skywalker's wife. So, not holding back on the spoilers in the headline there. Well, spoiler alert, Luke gets married. It's to this hot redhead chick.
I mean, to be fair, it's like 30 years old, so.
What? Are you saying that this would be a spoiler akin to Gandalf didn't die when he fell off the bridge in Moria? Because, I mean, I said
How
that.
You got to
dare
put the
you?
spoiler button on that one.
Oh, yeah, sorry. 1940s spoiler alert, or whatever. 1960s spoiler alert. But
I
yeah, so
had
let's
no
jump into
idea
it, guys.
Gandalf died. How dare you say that?
He doesn't die. He's reborn.
Thank you
Oh, right,
very
right,
much, Mr. Ruined the Movie. Anyway, so, we've got 10 actresses that Sean Morrison discusses here on Screen Rant. So let's take it away here. The first one on the list, guys, number 10, Kristen Stewart, known for Twilight and Love Lies Bleeding. I don't doubt that Kristen could do an amazing job as playing Mara Jade. Let's be honest, Star Wars isn't always that much of a requirement for you to have strong dramatic chops. We've got a lot of very, shall we say, trope-like or mythical characters in Star Wars that follow particular archetypes that are not super subtle at times. And Kristen is very good at not being super subtle. And so I think she could do it. The question becomes, would she do it in a likable enough fashion? At least for me, that's the question. In order for her to be Mara Jade, I think she'd kill it as the annoying or even like problematic Emperor's Hand version of Mara Jade when she's very much on the dark side with her purple lightsaber, dressed in her just one frame removed from Dominatrix black leather suit, and she's hunting down Luke Skywalker because that's her command, is to kill Luke Skywalker. One might call it her last command. You see what I did there? But as far as once she becomes to the light side and is romancing Luke, I don't know if I could buy that from Bella Swan. Derek, what do you think? Kristen Stewart for Mara Jade?
There's only been one thing I ever thought that Kristen Stewart's been decent in, and that was an SNL skit. Everything she's done has never been good.
Ouch.
I out of everyone on this list, I think she's the worst, to be honest. I was just sitting there like, this person is just throwing out people with name power. We'll go through the rest of the list. Now, at least those other ones that we'll get into are decent actresses and actor portions, but for the most part this one I was just sitting there like, this person's just trying to rile up a bunch of Star Wars fanboys and get them pissed off.
I mean, at a certain point when you write articles for places like Screen Rant, you're really hoping for engagement. So yes, you could be like rage.
You're just hoping for clickbait,
like,
right?
The chick from Twilight, Grah! But no.
But again, she's never done anything good that I mean, any of the movies you list her off of, they're terrible.
Yeah. Nathan, thoughts about Kristen Stewart as Mara Jade?
All right, let's be honest. This whole discussion with actors and casting is going to be more about you guys because there's a few people on this list I know of. I didn't watch Twilight. I'm
Good.
just going to leave it at that.
Yeah. All right, well, so we could talk a little bit about ages. I don't want to be one of those guys who's all like, so-and-so's too old to play Mara Jade.
All
Morrison
of these ones are too old.
Well, Morrison
No,
rightfully points
I don't
out
think they're all
it
too
depends on what time of her life you're going to tell the story. Because as he points out here in this first entry under Kristen Stewart, depending on how Star Wars introduces her to canon, Mara Jade could first appear at any point between the Battle of Jakku in 5 years after the Battle of Yavin, or before that even, and the destruction of the Jedi Temple on Ossus in 28 ABY. That also means that she could be as young as 22 or as old as 50. Stewart is 34 years old, which would make her the perfect age to play Mara Jade during the New Republic era of the Star Wars timeline, which the franchise is already heavily focusing on, as we like to call it, the Mandoverse, because that's the time frame of The Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew. So, yeah, again, it doesn't really matter too much these days the age of the actress versus the age of the character, but Mara Jade's got enough of an established, or I should say pre-existing, EU timeline of what she did at different parts of her life, that you could, like he said, easily have her anywhere between like 22 and 50. So,
You could even go a little bit younger and show her as the Emperor's Hand
yeah.
before the fall of the Empire. So
And I think if we ever do this with Heir to the Empire, we'll get flashbacks. Yeah, we
hey.
were talking about yeah, good point
Tales
there,
of the
Jared.
Jedi, yeah.
We were talking about Tales of the Cantina or Tales of the Jedi or even Tales of
Excuse me,
Jabba's Palace.
Jabba's Palace, yeah.
She was undercover at Jabba's Palace as a dancer named
You
Erica.
would see Jabba in the background too.
Yep, trying to find. Here, let me make that bigger. Trying to find Luke. She was there as like because she knew that Han Solo was frozen on the wall, and she knew that Luke would probably come try to rescue Han. So she was inserting herself there so that she could assassinate Luke when he showed up.
The only reason she didn't succeed was because Jabba told her that she wasn't allowed to come on the sail barge.
Right. She had to stay back at the palace, and that's where, and the sail barge, of course, is where we had the climax of that segment of Return of the Jedi. And there she is in her Emperor's Hand garb. This, of course, is the actress portraying both of those cards is Shannon McCrandle. Check her out on Facebook, you guys, if you were a fan of the Heir to the Empire in the 1990s. She still does some Star Wars-related memorabilia, autographs, and whatnot.
Now,
all right, next on our list. Go ahead.
If we did get her in the Empire timeline, I think she would probably be changed to be an Inquisitor.
Yes.
Because she kind of fulfills that same role, and we have an official role for that.
Right. So next on our list, number 9, Ana de Armas, who is, of course, known for Knives Out and Blade Runner 2049. I think of her as a Bond girl. I think Anna would be a great pick to play Mara Jade. She has that range. And in contemporary Star Wars, you need to be able to fight and be cool and imposing, but you also need good comedic timing. And if you watch Knives Out, Ana de Armas definitely has that great comedic timing. She recently added Spy to her collection of hats in the James Bond movie No Time to Die, Morrison writes, and her upcoming John Wick spinoff, Ballerina, should prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Ana de Armas is a modern-day action queen. So if you want to have someone who could credibly stand up to Luke Skywalker in a lightsaber duel in Luke's prime, this would be the kind of actress that you could get to do it and look amazing at the same time. Nathan, what do you think? Ana de Armas?
Okay, well, I have seen Knives Out, so I can at least speak a little bit on this one. Yay! That said, based solely on Knives Out, because that's the only thing I've seen her in, she didn't feel like someone who would be playing Mara Jade.
Okay, that's fair.
Now, that could just be my limited scope of knowledge on her work, but that character was very, very different from Mara Jade. So I don't know how well that would translate.
Totally fair answer. Derek, I think you've seen more Ana de Armas than Nathan has. What do you think here?
Yeah, no, actually, out of every one of them, which is kind of like we're going to go down this list that this person put from 10 to 1, and we're just on 9. Actually, this one was probably the one I thought that fit best. Again, wasn't a fan favorite of mine, of what I would picture, again, Mara Jade. But if you wanted somebody that could play kind of the seductive assassin role, can actually, carry well decently. And then obviously, besides just needing the wig or dyeing her hair to be the flame red, crimson red, whatever version you want to, again, they could make Mara Jade blue hair if they wanted to, but we would hope that they would keep her somewhat to the expanded universe lore, just because, again, you're trying to keep people that wanted all that stuff that Disney put away. I mean, they're bringing back Thrawn. He's still blue with red eyes, right? Yeah. You would think that they would at least keep that portion correct. I think she would probably look the most and probably be able to carry the most. But again, it depends on what you do with, as we talked about, right? What timeline are you looking at? All that stuff. But to your point, like with the whole ballerina thing, right? That's basically the whole assassin role and everything that they're doing in the John Wick series. Again, should be very up the same level of what Erica would be doing, or pre-Emperor. The Emperor as Emperor's Hand timeline version of it. Not to say we couldn't get that later and different if they wanted to bring her into the Mandoverse or whatever. But she's also at kind of a nice age where you could, not have to necessarily de-age her enough where you could see her playing herself 5 years younger, right? If they wanted to get that, because if you think about it, Jabba dies. It was only 5 or 6 years ago at this point, to be fair, right? When Return of the Jedi takes place. So for her to look like that wouldn't need any special effects or anything, right? So
Right.
Yeah, she is 36 according to my Google Foo.
Yeah.
But
So
she,
it
again,
would
with
be
makeup
fine.
and stuff,
Yeah.
she doesn't really look
she
36.
can play
right?
younger. Yeah.
So
All right, moving on. Number 8, Zendaya. Everybody knows who Zendaya is at this point. She's one of the most famous actresses on the planet.
Even I know who she is.
Yeah, Spider-Man: Homecoming, and of course, Part 1 and Part 2 of the recent remake of Dune,
and The Greatest Showman,
the sci-fi epic, and Greatest Showman. I mean, the list could go on and on. I love Zendaya. I think she's an amazing actress, and I talked earlier about comedic timing being important in contemporary Star Wars, really in Star Wars in general. And oh my gosh, Zendaya can be hilarious. I don't know if you guys ever watched the old Disney Channel show where she really came into fame, KC Undercover. That show is hysterical. It's definitely the right vehicle for her at that moment in her career, and she's done a really great job, or maybe just her management has done a really great job of finding her the right vehicle for her at the different stages of her career. And of course, being Spider-Man's love interest has been life transforming for her now that she and Tom Holland are actually engaged to each other in real life. But I don't feel that Zendaya is right for Mara Jade. I don't want to sound like I'm being racist or whatever, but I'm tired of Hollywood taking people who were famous characters that have red hair and recasting them as African American. It's happened a bunch, especially in the comics and fantasy sci-fi realm. I could go on and on with a list of all the people who had red hair in comics that got recast as African Americans in live action. Jimmy Olsen, Starfire, Lana Lang, etc., etc. Even
Ariel.
The Flash.
Ariel.
Yes,
not
the
a
Little
comic.
Mermaid. Not really a comic, but yeah, the same deal. The Little Mermaid is just one of the more recent examples. I don't mind if you want to do that, but I've always wanted the first version of the character in live action to look like it did on the page. And in this case, we have plenty of Dark Horse comics and, of course, the written description of the character, the previous photographs of the character that Derek just showed on his Star Wars cards. I don't want someone of Zendaya's complexion playing this character for the first time. I know people are going to hate me about it. That's fine. You can hate me all you want. I've got a whole list of times that Hollywood has decided that not only are we going to cast this character as a new race, but we're going to take the ginger and turn them into an African-American black person. I don't understand it, but it has become way too much of a pattern for it to be coincidence at this point. Anyways, dramatic-wise, gosh, of course, Zendaya could play this part really well. She'd bring some real good gravitas to Mara Jade. And if they do it, Mara Jade further along in her life, where she's been through a lot of tragedy and personal loss, I mean, Zendaya would be amazing at portraying that, like she did with Chani in Dune. I mean, it would be great, but I don't want to see it. And that's, this is a segment about our personal opinion and preference, and she's just not mine for this character. Derek, what do you think?
I like Zendaya as well, but I don't think she's a lead actress to the level of being able to carry a show or a movie to this level. I don't. Again, that's just my personal opinion. Again, I think great. Again, she can carry range. I'm not saying she can't do those types of things, but I haven't seen her in a commanding lead role where she could be the focal character, right? Any of the characters she's really ever been at has been kind of side characters, if you think about it, right? Even from Spider-Man to Dune to, anything else, then granted, to your point, the lead role she's been in have been Disney films, right? And it's kind of comedy and more kid friendly. And again, not saying those were bad things, but to me, as we were, kind of been doing it, I'd really like that kind of, that we were just talking about, Arna de Amos with the whole version of the assassin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you get that kind of almost like we'll get a mixture between, the the Luke Skywalker we never got, and then with Andor, right? Like I like the spy thriller, political things, kind of manipulation, stuff like that. And I just don't see Zendaya being able to portray that kind of character. Again, not saying she doesn't have range, and maybe she could, right? I'm not saying she wouldn't be able to do it, but I don't see her in enough films to be able to play that where like I could take her serious. Like to me, she would say a serious line, and then you'd expect her to do a snickering MJ remark, right? So I don't know. That's just my personal opinion of what I've seen with her. She's always been to me either kind of the side character in a love romance, or playing kind of that, zany character, like I said, which she's great at, but I just don't see it for this type of character's role that she'd be able to execute to the level that would make a lot of people happy.
Yeah. To be fair, she was the main role in Challengers, which was a movie about tennis pros, and she was definitely the lead. And that movie got a lot of critical acclaim. I'm not sure how successful it was box office wise. I think it did decent. I mean, I think it made money. So she can carry a movie as the main character. Just doesn't seem. It's just not what I want to see from a Mara Jade project. Nathan, what do you think? Zendaya for Mara Jade?
Apparently I'm a little bit higher on her than the two of you are. I'd be perfectly okay with her being Mara Jade as long as they make her hair extremely red. Now,
which
with
they can do.
They can do that. They absolutely can do that. And with Ariel, they did make her hair red, but it was a very dark red, to where you almost might not even notice that it is red at first. With Mara Jade, I'd want that really shocking red. But they can absolutely do that. I don't care as much about her skin tone as I do about the hair color. And they can change that. I do think that she has the ability to take on a lead role, quite frankly. So sorry, I disagree with you. But, that's my opinion.
That's your opinion. There's other, like I said, nothing wrong.
We can disagree and still respect each other. So
absolutely, because it's make believe, right? So
it is all make believe in the end. Yeah.
And let's be honest, the odds of Zendaya actually playing Mara Jade are pretty low. I mean, she doesn't really need to work in Star Wars.
No.
And Star Wars doesn't need her to get attention. So there you go. Now, moving on to option number 7, someone who wouldn't have a problem at all looking like a beautiful redhead is Karen Gillan. Now, I'm a little upset with Mr. Morrison here for writing that she's known for Guardians of the Galaxy and Jumanji, because I wanted him to be, she's known for Doctor Who,
Thank you.
Hack. Anyway, but so Karen is, of course, known for those things. I would also posit known for Infinity War, because a lot of people saw her as Nebula for the first time there. But yeah, of course, making her known for being Nebula is a little tough, because as Nebula, she doesn't look at all like herself or any of her other characters with all the makeup and the CGI and so forth. But I think Karen Gillan is an excellent choice to play Mara Jade. My only lament here is at this point, depending on which portion of Mara Jade's life we want to portray, then her age might be a little bit of an issue, but it's not that big of a deal. And she's got so much range, as we've seen by the things that she's known for, conversely to the stuff that we know her for. She's done all kinds of them. And the pull quote here is, if Star Wars needed to adapt to Heir to the Empire tomorrow, like quickly, fast track this project, Karen Gillan is the perfect pick to play Mara Jade from that particular segment of the character's life, when she was working with tangentially to Grand Admiral Thrawn, Jorah Sabath, so on and so forth, and hunting down Luke Skywalker. And then, of course, spoiler alert for real this time, you guys, for Heir to the Empire, I guess, has the pivotal moment where she is able to fulfill her last command to kill Luke, and then decides, oh my gosh, I'm no longer under this compulsion to obey the dead Emperor Palpatine's command. Let me just help out my new boyfriend, Luke Skywalker, whom I just
kills
killed.
Luke.
No, I was gonna leave that open so that anybody who doesn't know could be all like, wait, how does she kill him and he's still her boyfriend? Anyway, but yes, there is a clone of Luke, for those who don't know the story.
Because that's Ezra that we're going to get instead.
That's right. She kills the
clones
clone
in my Star Wars.
Satisfies. Yeah, you got your chocolate into my peanut butter. Anyway, so Derek, what do you think? Karen Gillan?
Out of all these actresses, she's the 100% that would fit the mental picture that you and I, Scott, have dubbed what Mara Jade should look like, right? Like perfect fit, and where she would be post Heir to the Empire, right? Where she would be past that, and again, not to say that she couldn't play a quote unquote younger self, but I just don't. I feel like she's at that point where she fits in the late 30s, early 40s type deal character, and she's great for it. But again, my personal experience with what she's done, I just don't see her in a leading role, though. That's my problem. She plays Nebula, which again is a great character, but I can't get the silliness and the zaniness out of it, right? Like, it's just that perception of what I've seen with her, right? Same thing through Jumanji, right? Like, she can do some good stuff, but it's that same, I can kick butt, but then I have these zingers, right? That these one-liners that make people laugh and stuff. And I just can't get that out of my head, right? And the same thing with Doctor Who, like the way the episodes I've seen with her, again, great, but she was the side character. Not to say that she didn't have some episodes and she did things, but I don't know. It just, to me, is Doctor Who's the same way that I look at Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Like, you can have some serious moments, but then like any other Marvel movie, there's a bunch of one-liner zingers for it, right? And I can't get that perception of her out of my head. And again, maybe some other movies she's done well and she's got range. And again, those people that would cast this person to play Mara Jade will look into that, right? They'll know that actor's range, right? And what they, see in them. And again, she could be the right fit. I just don't see it as a leading role that I want, as someone that I look across the screen and could be really intimidated, to your point earlier, right? Like, oh, this is a true assassin. Like, I just don't see that with her.
Well, I mean, I could see that viewpoint, but at the same time, this is Star Wars is a movie series that had people fall into a trash compactor and tell us one thing's for sure: we're all going to be a lot thinner after this. I could see there could be plenty of zingers for Karen to do,
but Andor wasn't like that, and Rogue One wasn't like that. I mean, there's some in Rogue One. Don't get me wrong, but.
And I don't know if Heir to the Empire is going to have an Andor atmosphere, or might it be more like a the Force Awakens atmosphere, a Return of the Jedi.
I mean, you'd have to look at Ahsoka, season 1 Ahsoka, where to me it had a couple of minor moments, right, with whatever the droid now escaping me that David Tennant voiced. Like, those were like the points, right? Because again, droids are the gimmick of it. But really, Ahsoka and Sabine, they didn't really have a whole lot of that. But again, there were some funny moments, don't get me wrong, but for them it was a lot more serious, right? Like, Hera had a couple of points, but for the most part it was serious as tone. But again, you're right, we don't know, right? What are they going to put it? So
yeah, it's difficult to remember that droid's name because he doesn't do the thing that most droids do, where he has numbers and letters. But it's
Huyang.
Huyang, that's right.
Huyang.
So I'm going to jump in here and say I would love to see Karen Gillan in this role. I do think that she would probably be playing something closer to the Heir to the Empire trilogy, given her age, but that doesn't mean that she couldn't voice something, say Tales of Jabba's Palace, just to bring that back up again.
We should write a story, guys, and submit it to Disney and see if they at least give us some credit.
That's what we did with Ming Na Wen, because she voices Fennec Shand in Bad Batch. She's not playing the younger version of herself. She's voicing the younger version of herself. And I think Karen could do that. And here's the number one reason that I want her to be Mara Jade. You already mentioned it. Huyang, David Tennant. We could have David Tennant and Karen Gillan together again.
That would be cool. I could see
Huyang, does he do it? I mean, I guess he could help her build the lightsaber.
Yeah. Although the two of them didn't do a whole lot together in Doctor Who. I think they've... Let's see.
You're right, because she was the first face that this face saw with Matt Smith's.
Yeah. I vaguely recall that in one of the crossover episodes for the anniversary of Doctor Who, I think she was involved as well as David and Matt and Rory.
But that's all you need. You just need that one episode.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. I don't necessarily want Mara Jade and Huyang to be, running all over the galaxy. They just need to meet at some point.
And I think
right now he's running over the galaxy with Ahsoka, so he can't really be, right?
Right.
I think that point that they could meet would be when she finishes being Darkseid and she eschews the purple lightsaber, and she has to get her blue
She needs a
lightsaber
new lightsaber.
made.
Yeah.
So there you go. Hu Yang is there to help her.
And
with
that'd be
it.
right
But I don't.
before Ahsoka goes and gets Sabine.
Yeah, we could totally have that happen. But again, Karen is the kind of actress who's so busy doing other stuff and so famous already. I don't think that
She
she's
doesn't
going
need
to
to do it.
Mara Jade. Yeah. Now, our next actress, number 6 on the list, is the one who I think actually will end up playing Mara Jade at some point, and that is Emma Corrin, who is of course known for Deadpool and Wolverine, where she played Cassandra Nova, the evil female twin of an alternate universe Professor Charles Xavier. She famously had the bald head, but of course that was all makeup / skullcap stuff. She's also well known for the miniseries The Crown, where she, I believe, plays Princess Diana in a story about British royalty. More to the point, she has the dramatic chops. She is, quote unquote, young enough to play Mara Jade at almost any stage of her life. Young enough also that if she becomes successful as Mara Jade and gets tied to the character, she'll play her across multiple projects, not just Heir to the Empire. And she's also in Nosferatu, the vampire movie that just came out last month, which I'm dying to see. I gotta go check it out. May have to wait for it to be streaming.
Dying.
I'm dying to see it. Anyway, so I think that she has definitely the dramatic chops, but also that expert timing. And here's the other reason why I think this is going to happen. We have never heard Mara Jade speak in canon anywhere. It's always been written on the page. Who's to say that as a good Imperial agent, she doesn't have quite the British accent? And
Well, she's
Emma
a villain,
could,
so she has to be British.
absolutely, yes.
She should,
she's an
yeah.
Imperial. She's a villain. She was on the dark side. She's buddy with Palpatine. Emma's British accent would be perfect for the evil version of Mara Jade, and then sort of lightens up a little when she goes to the light side. So yeah, this is the actress whom I think is actually going to get this role, and her association with Marvel means that she has an association with Disney, and so boom, it's almost destined to be. Nathan, what do you think? Emma Corrin for Mara Jade.
All right, so this is a little bit the opposite of Ana de Armas for me, because like Ana de Armas, I only know her from one role, and that is Deadpool versus Wolverine. But in that role, I feel like she played a character who very much could go on to play Mara Jade. Unlike Ana de Armas's character in Knives Out, who just didn't seem very Mara Jade at all. She did. She seemed
all right.
extremely evil because she was.
Yep.
And
yet the way that she was evil, especially to the guys who were filled with bravado, like Wolverine and Deadpool, was like just like super sexy. Oh my gosh, this chick is messing with us kind of evil.
Yeah, almost an etherealness to it. So I think that would translate well into Mara Jade.
Yeah, because with her mental powers, she wasn't going to overcome them physically. She's beating them in a more feminine way, if you traditionally feminine way. Almost that left-handed ability of she's got all these other people doing her dirty work for her, and then she's just going to literally outsmart you in ways that you never saw it coming, which was really cool. Derek, what do you think? Emma Corrin, Mara Jade, the British Imperial villainess?
I mean, everything you've laid out, I agree with you guys 100%. Phenomenal actress. I feel like she could carry the role, right? She's got the acting chops. The only thing I just dislike is that I just don't think she's just that intimidating enough, though, right? Like, I don't look at her presence. Like, she's very, very small, right? To you guys' point. Not saying that you can't play that, but I don't know. She'd have to bulk up just a little bit for me to be able to make me say, like, okay, that's someone that you could feel like could, go through some trials and tribulations in the swamps of Dagobah, right? Or, go through some trials and tribulations on Jabba's palace and the Tales of the Cantina and whatever else we're making up with her, right? Again, it's hard to say. I don't know. I look at like trying to imagine what she would look like with really like long red hair. And I don't know. I guess it's just the shape of her head that it just makes me, again, it's a physical feature. And again, not say it would screw up everything or anything. It's just, I don't know. I just, like you said, you kind of envision what she looks like from the comics. It's like, find me somebody that looks like that. And I feel like a couple of the others look more like that, But then to your point, she's probably got the best acting chops for that type of role that we'd want to play her for, right? So it's kind of like, which one do you pick, right? So
I felt like she was very intimidating as Cassandra Nova.
Yeah, she was.
But
But maybe perhaps not
but
physically
mind tricks, not with a
physically.
lightsaber.
I feel like that's part of Mara Jade. But, maybe this may just be the bald head talking. I think she might even be better as Asajj Ventress if we ever got a live action Asajj.
That I could get along with because she definitely looks like Asajj. That one you nailed, Nathan. Yes. Kudos on that.
Yes, I got one.
All right, moving on. Option number 5. Now it's my turn to take Nathan's role of I don't know this actress. Frances Turner, known for Fallout, which I haven't watched, and The Man in the High Castle, which I only watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes of season 1 because I just couldn't get into it. They changed a few things from the book, but that's neither here nor there. So Frances Turner, she is an African-American actress, and Morrison writes, if Star Wars wants to show Luke training his own son at the temple on Ossus, then Turner would be a perfect pick for a more loving and caring version of Mara Jade. So apparently that's something that this actress excels at. Frances Turner also has more than enough acting experience to show all the complexities of Mara Jade after she gave birth to Ben. That's right, in the original EU, Luke and Mara's son is named Ben. Her recent work in Fallout proves she's more than capable of playing a loving mother who's capable of also being truly ruthless, just like Mara Jade. So, I'm going to say, once again, I just do not want someone playing Mara Jade who isn't going to be essentially a British, like, white version of the character with red hair. I know this makes me sound so one-note, but if you want to remake this story later, recast it, sure. But the first live-action Mara Jade, I just don't want that to be someone of an African-American persuasion. And in this case, I'm really being way too restrict on this because I don't know much about Frances Turner's work. Sounds like she's a very competent actress, but even our author here seems to be implying that she's going to play a different, not so much badass assassin type of Mara Jade and more like what it would be like
drama
later on in life. Yeah, dramatic as a mother and a wife to Luke Skywalker, which could be a very compelling story. But if that's, I don't think that should be your first story that you do live action for Mara Jade, because I don't know that it would grab people the way that that you needed to in an action-oriented series.
Episode of a motherly, character and all that stuff. That would bore Star Wars fans to death. So
it might, yeah.
Well,
anyway, go ahead, Nathan.
If we did Mara Jade that way, then that would almost only work if the story was about Ben Skywalker or whatever they named their kid, because I doubt they named their kid Ben if his cousin was also Ben. Yeah. Also, it seems like Luke doesn't have a son in the sequel trilogy. Or
he doesn't have a wife either in the sequel trilogy.
So I'm not sure how exactly this whole story would intertwine.
We'd have to have a moment like in Star Trek V when Spock says to Kirk, I cannot kill Sybok, he's my brother. Spock, I get that the man is your fellow Vulcan. No, Captain, he is my brother. And it's all, Spock's had a brother this whole time and we never heard about it? And we'd have to have a similar feeling with regard to Last Jedi, Luke, of, yes, we know that Ben Solo betrayed everybody and became Kylo Ren and wiped out the Jedi School. Oh, did I forget to mention that 2 of the people at the Jedi School were my son and my wife? Oh, my bad. I just thought you got the idea that it was a terrible tragedy for me, and there you go.
I mean, at least it'd make it more tragic.
Well, we as the audience would have one of those Spock has a brother moments where Luke had a wife, So why did you mention this? Well, it's too painful. I didn't want to bring it up.
I think it would make more sense if they had a relationship but then ended up not getting married. And that would be a big change from the books, or at least the later books. But that also makes this version of the character that they're proposing for this actress not really valid.
Yeah, and so, but however, if we do it that way of, oh my gosh, Luke had a wife and he didn't mention her, it's in keeping with Star Wars tradition at this point, because I just watched half of Return of the Jedi because it was on TNT earlier today and I had it on in the background, and we got to the part where Master Yoda passes away and Luke goes out to the X-Wing and Ghost Obi-Wan appears and he's all like, by the time, when I met your father, he was a strong and talented star pilot, one of the best I've ever seen, but then later he became an amazing warrior. And I'm all, Wait, when you met Anakin, he was a talented star pilot? I mean, I guess you could say, look at the way he did this pod racing thing. He's totally a talented
Hey,
pilot.
He
at
blew
age
up
9.
that
He could
ship by
do
himself.
spinning, and that's a cool trick.
Wizard.
Yeah, I met him as a great star pilot, a 9-year-old prodigy. Actually, I didn't mention that.
Didn't mention
but
that part.
hey.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway, so we have a grand
let's be
Star Wars
honest.
tradition of I didn't mention that.
By the way, the lady you kissed on Hoth is your sister. No biggie.
Which in Return of the Jedi, in that scene where he's talking to Ghost Obi-Wan, Luke is all like, "Oh wait, Leia's my sister," and Obi-Wan is all like, "Yeah, nice of you to realize that now."
Like somehow I always knew.
Yeah,
Ew.
which is what's so ironic. Like, you didn't tell her this whole time. Like, I guess at that point they still wanted to keep it a secret, but.
No, see, he didn't tell her because he'd be like, "Ooh, this is going to be super embarrassing if I tell her this. So I'm not going to tell her." Anyway, so we know how Nathan feels about the idea of Frances Turner being Mara Jade. Derek, are you in agreement with us here? This is not the Mara Jade we're looking for.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna go by looks, no. But if we're gonna go by acting chops, I don't know enough about her, right? I mean, I've seen a little bit in the season 2, right, when she plays the character. I haven't got through the other seasons of The Boys. I haven't watched Fallout yet. No, I mean, I don't know enough about her that I could say, yeah, she'd fit it. But according to what we've been talking about and what the writer of this article is like, to me, I don't want to see that type of Mara Jade because it sounds like a very boring show. So
It would have to not be about Mara Jade, and that,
it would have
even
to be
if
about
it was,
kid and Luke.
even if it was, it would be the most boring show ever.
All right, well, moving on. Speaking of The Boys, our next suggestion, number 4, Claudia Dumet, also known for The Boys, and Dylan and Zoe. I have not watched much of The Boys. I don't really recognize this actress, but I get that her character on The Boys was very much intellectual, a cerebral hero, as it were. And so our author here writes, Claudia Dumet, who played Victoria Newman in The Boys, would be absolutely perfect to show why Mara Jade was such a feared operative of the Empire, because this character apparently would be focusing on her time as a spy, an assassin, and a perfect secret agent. Mara Jade's early days as the Emperor's Hand are important, but she spent a significantly longer amount of time as a Jedi Master and the wife of Luke Skywalker. Luckily, Dumet is just as well versed in playing that type of character as she is playing villains. And so the author here says that she could easily do it. I mean, she's got the looks, of course. I think she could pull off the secret agentness. I don't know enough about her to give glowing review or very negative response to her as Mara Jade. So I will just say that she would be capable and competent as Mara Jade. Derek, what do you think?
I mean, like I said, yeah, going back to The Boys and the character she plays, again, it would be a very good portion of the early days of the Emperor's Hand from an actor standpoint, right? She would do very well with that. But otherwise, I just seeing her with red hair would just look a little weird, though. I mean, I don't know, right? But to me, take her hair and you get that fire blazing red or that fire engine red or the dark red that Nathan's pointing out, and I just don't think it would mesh well. Again, I'd have to see some, but just trying to imagine it in my head because I don't have AI technology to put that on her. But I just don't think that would look more, But again, she'd be an alien of some sort, and they could have it that way. But like I said, I just don't visually picture Mara Jade in that fashion. But again, someone that comes with acting chops and be able to do the scenes very well, I think she could do it.
Cool. Nathan, I know you haven't watched The Boys, and I don't want
correct.
you to. But what do you think about this Dumet here being
Just because of that,
Mara
I'm
Jade?
going to refuse to watch the. Wait a minute, no, that's what you wanted. I understand that The Boys is kind of a what if the superheroes were not good people, and I just don't care for that.
Yeah, see, now what you just said is more Watchmen. Watchmen is what if the superheroes weren't good people. The Boys is what if the superheroes were all raging dicks.
Yeah, I
Not
didn't-
all
I-
superheroes,
I didn't
just the
want-
ones that become sellouts.
I didn't want to use that phrase, but I was thinking it.
Yeah, Derek, we could have a whole different podcast where you try to convince me that any one of the heroes on The Boys is worth anything.
You don't like
That's
Starlight?
The point
Dear Lord,
is,
don't even get me started.
to me, the thing that makes Superman interesting is that he is uncompromising in his goodness. And when you take that and go, well, what if he was not so good? It's just not an interesting character. So I have no interest in the boys. And as such, I know nothing about Claudia.
Okay,
Sorry.
then. Perfect answer. No problem. All right, moving on. Option number 3, Zoe Saldana. I don't think we need to talk about why Zoe is famous, but of course, Guardians of the Galaxy, Lioness. Nathan mentioned this earlier during the podcast prep. She's also famous for Avatar. Perhaps she's most famous to many people as wearing a bunch of makeup or special effects, but to me, if I saw her as Mara Jade, the aforementioned reasons why I don't want her to play are obvious. I won't belabor it again, but I would just be thinking, why does Lieutenant Uhura have a purple lightsaber? Because I've always thought of her as Lieutenant Uhura from the remake of Star Trek in 2009. Gosh, I can't believe how old that movie is now. But it's basically that it would take me right out of the movie. She's too famous, in my opinion, to play Mara Jade. Because whatever you know her from, when you see her as Mara Jade, you'll be like, oh, it's Gamora. Speaking of which, I mean, that's proof that she looks great when she has reddish hair. Gamora's hair is pretty much red, kind of maybe
She's got
a
green
wine
skin on
color.
too, though.
Yeah, the green skin. Yeah, sure. But the point being, she could easily look the part in some ways. But to me, I'd still be like, oh, it's Zoe Saldana, not, ooh, Mara Jade. That's so cool. Derek, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you, right? I just don't think the visual look would be there, and it would distract me because she's so well known in a lot of other great characters, right? I mean, that's the problem when you start trying to push, we're going to push this product and this show on you because so and so starring in it, and it's like, okay, great, but I've got to, I don't need famous actors in Star Wars to sell me it, right? Like I said, we had a good cast with the sequel trilogy characters, right? That were going to take the mantle. Again, the execution, in my opinion, was where it fell. But again, I liked every one of them. I mean, I especially like Oscar Isaacs, right? To me, he's really good. And I loved him in Moon Knight, right? And what he's been able to do. And I think, when somebody's given that type of opportunity, but a lot of them, like we said, prior to the sequel trilogy, they were pretty much unknown. Not saying they didn't have any, credentials or anything like that. And, and maybe they were famous in another country, right? I mean, that can happen too, right? But at the end of the day, I want to find somebody fresh. I want to do this. And like we talked about, it depends on the setting, but I'd really like somebody that could play the range from, Erica and the Emperor's Hand version, early on in the Jabba's palace scenes. And then without doing too much work, you could get her 5-8 years later where we're in the current verse of Heir to the Empire. And then you could get Mark Hamill in some cameos and do the whole, deep fake cuts and de-aging process or whatever, or just, at this point cast Sebastian Stan, but really at this point he's getting too old anyways, but it would still fit Luke Skywalker at that time frame. So it might still work. Right. But get somebody to do that. And we could get some of the stories we wanted about our main characters and bring in some of these characters from the legacy stuff that we want so much. So
Nathan, Zoe as Mara Jade?
Yeah, so obviously I know her as Uhura and also as Gamora, and I did see her in Avatar, even though it's a lot harder to recognize her in Avatar if you don't already know that it's her. You can hear her,
Right,
yes.
yeah.
And, they did base the model of the character on her, but it's just they're not human. they don't look.
Well, but I mean, also,
Gamora's not
I think
human
of
either, but
true. I think of Lupita
basically human
Nyong'o
with green
as
skin.
I think of Lupita Nyong'o as Maz Kanata, even though definitely that's not at all what she looks like. But the facial expressions, the cadence, the personality.
True. I think you guys are right on point. She's done so much stuff. We would all recognize her as something else. If she's not wearing makeup, I would probably recognize her as Uhura first and foremost. But even if she is, Gamora looks like Zoe with green skin. She just took the roommate from Star Trek 2009 Gala and said, you know what, green skin, red hair, I like it. I'm going to go with that.
Boom.
Yeah, boom, we're done. I don't think she would be great for this. And to Derek's point, yeah, she is one of the oldest people on this list. That's okay if we're doing a later Mara Jade, but it seems like kind of a waste to do Mara Jade and start with, yes, this is the end of her life, and not capture. I mean, part of the appeal of Mara Jade is she has this long arc of, she was the Emperor's hand, and then she had the Emperor's command in her brain, and then she overcame that, and you kind of want to get all of that, and you don't really get it if you start with, yes, this is the version that's married to Luke.
Yeah, yeah. All right, next up, number 2 on our list, Daikin Lachman, known for Altered Carbon and Severance. This is an Asian actress whom I have seen in some things other than Altered Carbon and Severance. I just can't quite place it. There's an image in this article of her in a red dress that's got cutouts where you can see like this serpentine tattoo that goes like all the way up her leg and body and around to her the right arm. I know I've seen whatever movie or TV show that is from, but I'll have to look that up later. I don't mind the idea of Miss Lockman here playing Mara Jade. I think if they take a chance on her, she could probably absolutely kill the role because she's done a lot of science fiction already, and she's also very good at martial arts and hand-to-hand combat. So being able to do a lightsaber duel, I'm sure, would be right up her alley. I don't know that she has the dramatic chops to carry the weight of being programmed to kill Luke Skywalker, be it also being in love with Luke Skywalker. So I'm not sure that she could pull off the dramatic chops, but sometimes in contemporary Star Wars, that's not as big of a deal. I wouldn't hate this, but I'm going back to a similar reason. Like, this is just not really the look that I have in my mind for the classic Mara Jade as the redhead with somewhat pale skin. I don't think that Daikin Lachman could pull off the whole British Imperial assassin thing. I'm sure she could prove me wrong. And it's not that big of a deal these days for people to have a certain nationality or look to them. But if this happens, well, let's be honest. If they make a story about Mara Jade, even if it is Zoe Saldana playing her, I'm going to see it or watching it on stream. But if it is Daikin here, I won't be too disappointed, but it's not my first choice for the role. Nathan, what do you think about Daikin Lachman playing Mara Jade?
This is another one where I don't know anything that she's in and don't really know anything about her. Just going based off of looks, I mean, she's not bad looking, but you're right that she doesn't look like Mara Jade. So they'd have to do quite a bit to get her to look the role. And that's really about all I can say on that.
All right, sure, no problem. Derek, do you know much about her?
She's been in a lot of stuff, right? So that red dress was from the episode she appeared in Supergirl. She played Victoria.
Yep. I have absolutely seen every episode of Supergirl, many of them more than once. So that's definitely where I saw her in that red dress.
She's obviously been in the Jurassic World series, right? She's played the character there for the Soyena Santos. She's been in the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. She did the voice for in Raya and the Last Dragon, the General At Attin. So she's been in 19 episodes of Severance. And then she was in 11 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where she played, is that Huang or Juang?
Or Jiaying.
Jiaying, right. I never got to finish that series. So she's been in there.
I didn't finish it.
She obviously is most well known a lot for Dollhouse, which was a pretty good show. She was in 27 episodes of that series in those couple of seasons there. So again, very well known to that point. Yes, let's be honest. To me, she would have also made a perfect Sabine, right? I mean, she would have been another type of character that could have played Sabine of someone of Asian descent. And again, if they get it, we'll live with it, right? But again, you're just going to piss off a bunch of fanboys who have this premonition vision of what Mara Jade looks like. She's Caucasian with red hair, give us that. And, someone with a good acting chops and, a good story and they'll make money. And again, I don't know why they haven't done this, but here we are talking about it and going almost 2 hours of the podcast.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've reached the top of the list here, and the author's number one choice for actress to play Mara Jade. I am 110% opposed to this idea, but it's
Oh,
not because she doesn't look right. It's because I cannot stand this actress and her method of delivery. It's Sophie Turner, known, of course, for Game of Thrones, where she was Sansa Stark, and Dark Phoenix from the Fox X-Men movies, almost the new class of X-Men, if you will. She definitely has the look with her red hair and her light complexion. She has a British accent, being British and whatnot. You'd think that I'd be all about this, except I cannot stand this actress. Every time she is on screen portraying someone, I just kind of roll my eyes because to me, she always comes across as wooden, one note, very flat, very one dimensional portrayal of whether it be Jean Grey or Sansa Stark or anybody else I've ever watched her try to play. Am I being cruel and very harsh? Yes, I am, because I was very disappointed with her as Jean Grey. Now, Famke Janssen didn't exactly kill it as Jean Grey, but I felt there were plenty of other actresses who could have done a better job as the new Jean Grey in the Dark Phoenix saga and, of course, in the previous other
Take that back.
versions of
Femke
X-Men.
was excellent.
Well, okay, I'm not saying she was bad. She wasn't like, Oscar worthy or anything, but she did a good job. She did a better job than Miss Turner here, that's for sure. And I think the box office returns and the critical reception of both of those versions of Jean Grey and the X-Men films they were in will bear out my opinion as the majority. Correct? Maybe not, but majority, yes. Yeah, I don't want Sophie Turner to play Mara Jade. Just because I don't feel that she's a good enough actress. As we say here in the internet era, I said what I said, and I'll stand by it. Now, this is one man's opinion. If you think Sophie Turner is an excellent actress and is just waiting in the wings for her Oscar, more power to you. And you could be right. Maybe someday in the future, she's going to have a role that she just is absolutely incredible in. And I'll have to eat my words about how she's always been wooden and one note. But to me, she is just like Shailene Woodley. I don't know why she is famous. I cannot figure out why people enjoy watching movies where this actress is involved. That's just my opinion, and I'll turn it over to you guys. Derek, what do you think? Sophie Turner as Mara Jade.
No, I'm with you, Scott. She's just another Kristen Stewart to me, right? At least Sophie Turner was in something that was good for the most part, when most people will reminisce of the first 7 seasons of Game of Thrones. But again, it wasn't like she was the one that carried the show, right? Like, she had a script, she was a decent character, but again, she was surrounded by so much talent, right? She's one of those people that will be remembered for a character that on a show that was wonderful, but she really wasn't the piece that was doing all that, right? I mean, you got to think about all the interaction she had with Peter Dinklage, right? And all the characters that she had around that. Like, she wasn't the reason that was so memorable, right? And then to your point, and then honestly, I don't care for her person outside because she thinks she's the bee's knees. And I don't, I'm put off by that, right? She's not somebody, again, you can be good and even know you're good. But you can play it up, right? You could do that. She doesn't. She thinks she's, like I said, she's some cuss words you could say here, but I'm not. The point, right?
I appreciate you not saying them. Thank you.
But again, I'm with you on this, and the fact that this writer put her at number 1 shows me that he doesn't really know acting, in my opinion, because all he did was throw a bunch of quote unquote famous people. Again, some of them are wonderful, some of them are good, right? But it almost is like, I'm just going to throw a bunch of famous people, women out there, whether they're from age range of, early 20s to in their 50s at this point, and just, whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess, and like we talked about earlier, right? I mean, that's what they're doing at Screen Rant. They're just looking for clicks, and someone that's willing to, at least it wasn't, I guess, put on by AI, but maybe AI would have wrote a better article.
Wow.
Okay, all right, Nathan. Now that Derek and I have, emptied the Prometheum container on our heavy flamer, what are your thoughts about Sophie Turner as Mara Jade?
Oh, this is going to be so anticlimactic. So, I watched the first episode of Game of Thrones at your house, Scott, and said, this has way too much sex and violence, and mostly sex. For me, I'm out. Now, I did end up watching the back end of season 7 and season 8 with my girlfriend.
Oh,
because
how weird for you to only watch that part. You'd be like, "Who's this? What's happening? Where
Yeah,
are there more
very
dragons?
much
What?"
so. Very much so. Yes, it
Where
was
did Sean Bean
very-
go?
Right? Where's Boromir?
Okay. Now, I did know that character was played by Sean Bean. So
So you just
I
assumed.
just assumed he was dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got it.
and I was right. I didn't have to
Died
ask
season
about that
1.
one.
You would have been in for a long other 6 seasons to get to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really remember her from Game of Thrones. I know she was in it, but I can't tell you anything of what happened in Game of Thrones. And then she was in Dark Phoenix. And looking back, I'm not even sure I actually watched that movie.
You're not the only person. Even big time Marvel Comics fans and X-Men fans were just like, "Oh yeah, that came out, didn't it?"
Yeah.
The most famous line she has is when she screams. That's it. When she's
Oh,
screaming
fun.
about the Phoenix. That's all they ever show her in the trailer, and that's all people ever show in the highlight of it.
Well, the weird thing about it is we had the Phoenix show up in X-Men 3.
Mhm.
So why do we have a whole another Dark Phoenix movie?
Because we took the X-Men timeline and like spun it into
shattered
a
it?
blender
Yeah.
with X-Men Days of Future Past, and
Well,
then of course
and they
X-Men.
did the younger
and-
version, right? So again,
and First
the
Class,
same people
yeah.
that wrote the other thing and why they did it. That's why Wolverine and Deadpool was an homage to Fox, because Fox screwed up all the X-Men series for the most part.
They
after
really
the
foxed
first
it
two.
up. Yes.
So
Yes,
Yeah. So
they foxed around and found out.
So after you two have just
Ding.
completely obliterated Sophie Turner here, I don't really have
did the
anything
writer.
to say about her.
Yeah, Derek wasn't too hard on Sophie. He just was hating this guy. Like, I'm sure AI could have written a better article, but boom!
Fair enough, but part of your rationale there is he bothered to put Sophie Turner in number 1.
Touche.
So
All right, well, so there's our wrap up of this whole fan casting of Mara Jade, and of course, you know what will happen. Dave Filoni has already got an actress lined up to play Mara Jade in his Heir to the Empire project, who we've never heard of, and is way better than any of these young ladies at being Mara Jade. At least I hope that's the case.
it's going to be Molly Quinn.
Oh,
Yeah. So we actually talked about her before we got on today, because I've been watching through Castle, and she plays Nathan Fillion's daughter in that.
I could see that
She's
happening.
got the red hair for it.
What I would love to see happen, because we talked in this article already about how you could have Mara Jade anywhere from age 22 to 50, or even before 22. I'd love to see a la 1984 Dune, 1984 Dune from David Lynch. The whole movie begins with Princess Irulan appearing on screen and doing like a voiceover as she's teaching Imperial history to students thousands of years after Paul Atreides' death. Hundreds of years after Paul Atreides has ascended. And I would like to see Alicia Witt, speaking of Dune from the 80s, be age 50 or so, Mara Jade, at the beginning of the film, and the whole thing is her giving a flashback to teach the students at the new Jedi Academy an important lesson about the ways of the Force. And when we cut back in time, Molly Quinn is playing younger Mara Jade. Alicia Witt plays older Mara Jade, all in the same project, either series or film.
I will accept this if we also have Billy D. Williams as older Lando.
just merge the
Doing
Lando
the-
Chronicles with
The
this.
Calrissian Chronicles.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
But
good
I would
times.
only accept this if they finally give her own opportunity to direct the entire series, not just episodes. Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine if we had Bryce Dallas Howard directing Alicia Witt and Molly Quinn as a Mara Jade project? I think
whole
that
redhead.
as soon as I bought the ticket, I would spontaneously combust in euphoria. Like, I wouldn't get to see the movie because I'd be dead, but I'd be happy about it. Anyway, so moving on, we have even more Star Wars casting stuff to talk about. Now, this one is not fan casting, nor is it even theory casting. It's actually happened casting. Unfortunately, in Ahsoka, we've got to recast Baylan Skoll, one of the best parts of the Ahsoka series, because sadly, Ray Stevenson has passed away. But we have yet another Game of Thrones connection on this episode of the podcast, because the person who is going to be recast as Balin Skull to take Stevenson's place, is Rory McCann, who is most famous for being the Hound
The Hound. Not
the Hound on.
I know the Mountain and the Hound are
on,
brothers.
Game of Thrones. Yeah, exactly. So this is the more disfigured guy that was at certain points Peter Dinklage's lackey as a Lannister agent in Game of Thrones. So yes, the Hound is going to be taking over as Balin Skull. We have an article here from Forbes written by Eric Kane from January the 10th, because that's roughly about the time that this casting was announced. And this is officially announced by Star Wars, by Lucasfilm, I think it was on January the 9th, first broken by The Hollywood Reporter. So McCann is, of course, best known for his portrayal of Sir Sandor the Hound Clegane in Game of Thrones, and he will be Balin Skull in Ahsoka Season 2. I think this is great casting. The Hound was suitable, gruff, and had a lot of gravitas, but yet was also basically a monster there on Game of Thrones, which is, I think, all of the stuff you need to be a really good Dark Lord of the Sith type person. Now, we don't have any proof that Balin Skull is a Sith, but he definitely has that cadence, and he carries himself that way.
He knew Anakin.
He knew Anakin, and he kind of has that whole atmosphere about him, like Count Dooku, Darth Tyrannus, where he's doing his own thing. He's definitely not a Jedi. He's definitely not on the light side, but he's not like cartoonishly, mustache-twirlingly evil. So just like Count Dooku, he has some reason for doing the stuff that he does. We don't yet know that exact reason for Balin Skull, but we assume it has something to do with the father, the daughter, and the son, because he was standing on a statue at the end of Season 1, portraying the father, the daughter, and the son. At least they were direct enough about that so that we don't have to get into some big debate about symbolism. It's hitting us over the head with 900-ton stone statues of those characters from Star Wars: The Clone Wars animated series. I'm excited to see McCann do this. He's a little bit bigger than Stevenson physically, but I don't think that's that big of a deal breaker. Might even add to him being more imposing the next time he has to go lightsaber to lightsaber with Ahsoka herself, Rosario Dawson.
His longsword lightsaber.
Can you imagine if they have him somehow find and switch to a crossguard saber? That would be so, like Kylo Ren's. That would be so cool. Vintage lightsaber. Nathan, you're our Clone Wars guy, our Filoni-verse guy. Balin Skull, not from the Clone Wars, but clearly a creation of Dave, inspired by the Clone Wars, obviously, with all this talk of Mortis trilogy. What are your thoughts about McCann? Did you ever see him as the Hound on Game of Thrones?
Nope. No, I didn't. But
he didn't survive long enough.
One of the few things that I do know about Rory McCann is that he and Ray Stevenson were friends. And I think that adds to this casting because it feels like a tribute to Ray Stevenson to have somebody who was his friend be the next actor for this character. And physically, he looks close enough. That is a bigger deal for me than with Mara Jade, because we saw this character in live action, and the next season is supposed to pick up, right afterwards. He shouldn't look drastically different. Maybe they have a scene where he's bathed in light from the statues or something, and he looks a little bit different. Yes, It's me. I'm here now. Get over it.
Balin Skull, the White.
Yes,
there we go.
I have returned from the Mortis statues as the White.
Yeah, they could give some throwaway thing to explain the physical changes, but it shouldn't be that big of a physical change. They are close enough to each other in stature and physique and in even facial structure that I don't think it's going to be an issue going forward.
Or maybe he finds a Revan or Darth Bane mask.
Oh, dude, if he finds a mask, puts it on, and then when he takes it off, his face is different, that'd be cool.
Or just it's all scarred up, right? Like he has to put the mask on because something happens, right? He's going there and he's trial and he, gets hurt in the trial. His face gets burned, right? Or something, right?
Well, and we know that he can play a disfigured character.
I was going to say, of course, then you had some people complaining, he's just a Hound in Star Wars. And we're like, so
So,
Right.
I mean, the fact that, like I said, the dude's 6'6", like he's bigger than me,
Yeah.
right? So, like to
Yeah.
Nathan's point, right? That's the one thing I liked about it was like, oh, okay, he's actually potentially going to be a bigger, like, on-screen presence than Ray Stevenson was, right? And again, let's be honest, like most Hollywood actresses and actors are very small people, anyways. So normally they have to like make people smaller. And so it was nice seeing that, right? Like we talked about. I mean, I was talking about the longsword version of the saber because, we had talked about that's how Balin probably with this technique and potentially the saber he was using was able to overpower Ahsoka, right? In the way they were fighting. So to me, it just makes sense that, oh, hey, and then to Nathan's point, right? That, Ray and Rory were friends, and it's a nice homage tribute, right? Like whenever people do that, I always think about when Heath Ledger died, right? And you had Jude Law, Johnny Depp, and who was the other one now that's escaping me? When all three of them played Heath Ledger's character in what was that, the Emporium of Doctor something or other, whatever. I can't remember the full name.
Yeah.
But the fact that the scenes that Heath had already filmed were outside reality, and then the fantasy worlds that they all played the three different versions of him was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right. And this is where it's kind of the same concept where like you may get a better performance and a better character out of this because he really wants to do justice for his friend. Right. So, again, I'm super excited for this because one, we were afraid that we were going to not have this character anymore because they were going to go the whole Chadwick Boseman and not recast it, Black Panther, right? Type deal where,
which would have been a shame because
correct.
He's such a great character.
Especially, yes. I mean, really, let's be fair. We only got him for so many scenes anyways in season 1, which was 8 episodes anyways. Right. So, so the fact that we're going to get this character more and we're going to get somebody, I think, who's going to treat it a little bit more than they would just a normal role. I'm not saying that he ever, cast it in, right? Like you said, the Hound, phenomenal character, right? And we know he can act, but I think that we'll get that little bit extra aurora around it. We'll get that little bit extra oomph out of it. And I'm really super excited to see what they do with that. To me, honestly, if it's sidebars and it's just because, again, this is the problem. You got so many great characters that I'm interested in, so much going on, and you got them on one side of this multi-galaxy to the other side going on with Thrawn. Now it's like there's just not going to be enough time to really deep dive these characters, and I hate that, right? Like I just give me focused on what's going on with the antagonist and the protagonist, and let's go. Don't introduce all these other great side characters because I want 20 other shows on these side characters because they entice me.
And that circles it all the way back around to Skeleton Crew, and how Skeleton Crew is great in part because it's telling this self-contained story, much like the original Star Wars was a self-contained story that suggested a bigger world but didn't require it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. Well, if any of that happens on Ahsoka Season 2, we're definitely going to talk about it here on the podcast. But for now, it's time for Derek's favorite part of the show, and that is, what Star Wars shirt are we wearing this week? Derek, what do you got? It looks like you have something non-Star Wars t-shirty.
Non-t-shirty, but it's still Star Wars, of course. So I said, I'm sure we'll be showing our Christmas presents for a while here on this. So here's one of my things that I got. Which
Wookiee socks.
Chewbacca
socks.
They're not fuzzy furry socks. No, they haven't made mucklucks like that yet. But if I stick my hand here, so that way you guys can see the front facing, what it would look like on my leg.
I'm kind of jealous. I would wear those.
That's cool.
I would wear those to work and just dare people to call me out on
all the way on the toe and everything else. So.
Yeah, the bandolier. Yeah, good times. Nice.
And it's only one side too. It's not like you got a double sided, so it's actually all the way truly around. So, anyways,
yeah, excellent. Well, as you heard me say earlier, we've been dealing with some ice and snow here in the North Carolina area. So I wore my Empire Strikes Back Battle of Hoth inspired shirt that references the old Empire Strikes Back Atari video game. So you can see the AT-AT on there being attacked by a T-47, and that I have the high score on the machine here. I played this game back in the day, and I've recently played it on an emulator on my laptop, and it's still a blast and still really, really difficult. There we go. Ye old Empire Strikes Back arcade game t-shirt. Nathan, what do you got?
All right. Well, I've already mentioned it, but I've got, in tribute to Brutus, my Wolfpack shirt. This is not to be confused with the NC State Wolfpack.
Yes.
My girlfriend's nephew, his dad really likes UNC Chapel Hill. His granddad really likes Wolfpack. So he's been crossed over to the Wolfpack side, and his dad just hates that. But no,
But hey, your shirt is more easily identifiable as not NC State, what with it being blue shirt instead of red shirt.
Yeah, and I tried to explain that to him because I was wearing this shirt last time I saw him, and he was like, "Hey, you've got a Wolfpack shirt." I'm like, "Yeah, not that.
Well,
not
yes,
that
but
how do I explain? Let me start with the quote. No, there's too much. Let me sum up. Yeah, but I'm wearing this in honor of Brutus today because I'm so sad that he will no longer be in any Star Wars ever, probably. But
indeed. Well, anyways, if you guys out there want to get your own cool What a Piece of Junk t-shirt, or coffee mug, or mouse pad, or other kinds of merchandise from our show, or any other FPN show, please head over to tpublic.com and search up Fandom Podcast Network in the search bar, and you can find all kinds of cool stuff like that. And speaking of the Fandom Podcast Network, Nathan, where can people find us out on the internet?
All right, well, we've been going for 2 hours and 10 minutes, so I'm going to do a really short version of this. You already know where to find us, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be listening to us right now. So I'm going to say, please like, comment, subscribe, give us 5-star reviews, 10-star reviews, whatever star reviews you can give us. Derek, why do we like those high-star reviews?
We like those high star reviews because that's helping with the algorithm to find us in those podcast streaming services. So make sure you like that by giving us more reviews, because otherwise, again, we're going to have to go and rob another vault.
Yeah, and it's hard work, really.
Man.
I mean,
Last time
getting
there
past
was
the
only one
barrier
credit.
alone. That's right. Yes. Anyways, all right. Well, thanks for joining us on this extra long episode. Next week, we'll all be looking with favoritism, or at least some high hopes, for the finale of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, and we'll be back to tell you all what we thought about it. But until then, please hit us up on social media to let us know what you think, and always remember to respect each other, and always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it!